Good evening. It is Tuesday, March 25th at 6:30 p.m., and I am calling this regular City Council meeting to order. Knock, knock, knock. So we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. We have Parker Runnels and Carter Cruz from Emile Elementary. They are part of the SWAT team, which stands for Students with Athletic Talent, and they are leaders in their PE class, and they are going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance and the Texas Pledge. So everyone stand.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, for liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to the Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Excellent. Let's give them a hand. So can y'all come back up here for just a second? We want to get your picture. Pictures are required. Yeah. So come stand with your backs to here. Yes. Coming up here together.
Let me grab one for our Emile school. Okay.
Okay, everyone join me standing again. Mr. Hardy Overton, who is City of Bastrop Police Chaplain, is going to lead us in prayer.
Oh, most Heavenly Father, as we come today in your honor and your glory, Lord, we just want to thank you for your mercy and your grace. Thank you for allowing us to be here tonight. Lord, I just want to pray for the mayor pro and the council and the city manager. Guide them in their decision makings, the ones that are here, Lord, to say whatever they need to say as we discuss things. We just want to ask you, Father, let the Holy Spirit help us in looking over our city and our county, and that decisions is made, Lord, with your love intent. And we just want to say thank you, Lord, and we give you all the honor and all the glory. In Jesus' mighty name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Okay, be seated. Give me just 1 second. So this is Levon, and help me with your last name, Bidell? Bidell, excellent. And he is also one of the leaders at Emile in their SWAT team, and he was also going to help us with the pledge this morning, but we beat him by 30 seconds. So everyone say hi. So what's your favorite class?
Specials or
Any of them.
reading?
Reading, excellent. So what do you want to be when you grow up?
Professional football player.
Okay, awesome. It pays more than mayor, I promise. Yeah. So, well, welcome, and thank you for volunteering to help us out today. We're going to have you stand up here and take a picture.
Parker, do you want to get in a picture with him? Go ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you everyone for helping encourage our youth. It's important. So we are going to start off by going into executive session. We are removing item 4A from the agenda entirely. We will not be discussing that one. We will be discussing items 4B, 4C, and 11A. So 4B, City Council shall convene into closed executive session pursuant to Texas Government Code Sections 551071 and 551072 to seek the advice of legal counsel regarding acquisitions of real estate related to the West Side Collection System Project and Agnes Street, and pending litigation of the following pending proceeding in Bastrop County Court at Law Number 1, cause number 20-2284, and cause number 23-21970, City of Bastrop v. John A. and Tina T. Nixon. Item 4C, City Council shall convene into a closed executive session pursuant to Texas Government Code Section 551071 to seek the advice of legal counsel regarding the findings of the forensic audit in the matter of City of Bastrop versus KSA Engineers. And 11A is consider and act on the second reading of ordinance number 2025-31, authorizing the appointment of Caroline McClyman, J.D., as presiding municipal judge of the City of Bastrop Municipal Court and appointing said judge for a 2-year term effective March 11th, 2025. And so it is 6:36 p.m. and council is in executive session. Okay, it is 6:52 p.m. and we are back from executive session. We have action on item 4B. Is there a motion? No. That was yours. Yeah.
Yes, I make a motion to direct legal counsel to finalize and execute the settlement agreement regarding proceedings in the Bastrop County Court at Law, number 1, cause number 20-20284, and cause number 23-21970, City of Bastrop versus John A. and Tina T. Nixon.
Second.
So we have a motion from Councilperson Foster, a second by Councilperson Plunkett. Is there any other discussion, council? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion passes unanimously. We'll move on to item 4C.
I make a motion to approve the findings as presented in the Vertex Company's audit report regarding payment to KSA.
Second.
A motion from Councilperson Meyer, a second from Councilperson Lee. Any other discussion, council? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion passes unanimously. We are now going to move on to item 11A, and this one is item for individual consideration. This is consider and act on the second reading of ordinance number 2025-31, authorizing the appointment of Carolyn A. McClyman, J.D., as presiding municipal judge of the City of Bastrop Municipal Court and appointing said judge for a 2-year term effective March 11th, 2025.
Move to approve with the exception of, I'd like to strike section 4 as being irrelevant and renumber the remaining ones accordingly.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion from Councilperson Plunkett, a second from Councilperson Meyer. Any other discussion, council? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Okay, the motion passes unanimously. We will move on to item 11A-B, swearing oath of office of presiding municipal judge Caroline A. McClyman, J.D., by the Honorable Chris Dugan, State District Judge, District 423. You're up, Judge. Judge and judges, yeah. Yeah.
If you will raise your right hand, you repeat after me. I, Carolyn A. McClyman, J.D.
I, Caroline A. McClyman, J.D.
Do solemnly swear or affirm
do solemnly swear or affirm
that I will faithfully execute directly
that I have not directly
or indirectly paid, offered, promised to pay,
paid, offered, or promised to pay,
contributed, or promised to contribute
contributed, or promised to contribute
any money or thing
any money or thing
of value,
of value,
or promised any public office
or promised any public office
or employment
or employment
for the giving or withholding
for the giving or withholding
of a vote
of a vote
at the election
at the election
at which I was elected,
at which I was elected,
or as a reward
or as a reward
to secure my appointment
to secure my appointment
or confirmation,
or confirmation,
whichever the case may be,
whichever the case may be,
so help me God.
so help me God.
Now you're
Okay. So we are now going to move back up to item 6A.
Okay, you're forced to take a picture of me, that's my force.
Forced to take a picture. Yes, ma'am. As a council. You need a gavel? I just,
I'm pretty good. Thank you so much. And I appreciate all of you for supporting our court. And I do want to say that we have been very blessed with a wonderful court staff that makes my job very, very easy. And you've got the opportunity to sit in on a jury trial in our court. So I just want to thank the council and Mayor Pro Tem for supporting our court and giving us the resources that we need so that we can judicially dispose of all the cases. I think we've got a wonderful relationship with Bastrop ISD, ensuring the parents are ensuring that their students are attending school, and that we've been able to really clear our case load and our docket. With the help of the city manager, we've become all electronic, which is wonderful. So I'm able to sign warrants and handle the matters 24/7, and it works out wonderful. So thank you to the city for supporting the court. It's truly appreciated.
And I serve on the security commission or whatever.
Committee, yes. So we've got a metal detector, we're following state laws, and we've really expanded the court's ability to service the needs of the citizens and ensuring that everybody's safe while they're in the courtroom. So thank you.
Okay, so now we will move on to item 6A, the Mayor Pro Tem's report, unless someone else has another diversion for me. Okay, so I only have three things to say today. On March 12th, I joined Councilperson Fossler for a county health department update. They've kind of moved from their organization phase into their execution phase. And they have some contractors and students and other people contributing to that effort. And I have requested that they come to our council and give us a formal update on where they are and what they've accomplished. And so we look forward to hearing that. On March 22nd, last Saturday, I prayed a blessing over the Bastrop Youth Baseball and Softball Organization on the opening day of spring ball and throughout the ceremonial first pitch. I hadn't touched a baseball in 15 years. I was high and outside, but the catcher could catch it, and so they cheered for me. They were very kind. Also on March 22nd, many of us and many of you participated in Bastrop Clean Sweep, which is something that we plan to do perhaps annually, but maybe even more frequently than that as necessary. But what we did was we targeted specific hotspots in the community and cleaned up things. And so the throwing out the first pitch for me kind of conflicted on the front end of that. And so I put on my Clean Sweep t-shirt and then just hunted for people and found Councilperson Meyer sweeping up leaves. And so I helped her with that on Saturday morning. So that's what I've got to report. Councilperson Fossler.
Good evening, y'all. I have 2 bits of news to report. First of all, someone sent me a good old-fashioned copy and clip from a newspaper from the Houston Chronicle. And turns out that Conroe is going through the very same quorum issue that we were going through last year, and that they discovered a possible loophole in the city charter allowing a voting majority of 3 council members to meet outside of a called meeting. And they quoted us. They quoted Bastrop as a case of how to solve this quorum issue. And so I just want you to know, I was very proud of us for handling our issue swiftly once it was discovered. I want to thank everybody on the Citizen Charter Review Committee, everyone on council, and the people for voting it and changing the charter, because we got a 1 for transparency that day. So go Bastrop. We were quoted as how to solve this issue. Also, it's International Women's Month, and it's at the end of it, and our first female mayor is still not on the wall. So I would like to request that our first and only female mayor be put on the wall. If we could please get that done, City Manager, that would be great. Thank you.
Councilperson Plunkett.
I'll yield my time.
Councilperson Meyer.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. So I just want to thank you also for helping us with the clean sweep. We were on the downtown crew, and Viviana and I made a great team. We got those leaves in those bags, and I can't tell you how many bags of leaves we had, but we got them done. But everyone, thank you. All the staff, all the volunteers that showed up. We're just a huge team, right? We're Team Bastrop, so thank y'all for that. Also, I want to remind everyone that this Sunday from 9 to 1, Save an Angel will be hosting a free rabies vaccination in the city parking lot out here, and low-cost wellness, but also $22 microchipping. So microchipping is so important to save lives of our animals, but also keep animals out of our shelters. So please take advantage Sunday. If you don't have your animal microchipped, if he needs a vaccination, come on down to the parking lot at City Hall and get that done on Sunday. One last thing, I want to congratulate the Bastrop High School boys soccer team for the victory in their round of the playoff. It was, I hear it was a shootout at the end. It went into overtime and it was a shootout and we won, so we made it to the next round. So congratulations, BHS boys soccer team.
So one comment on the Save an Angel, that is Sunday, and my wife has signed up for it, but they have appointments, and so you need to go to their website and get an appointment for your animal. If you just showed up, maybe that would work out, but maybe it wouldn't. So do the appointment thing. That'll be sure that it works out. Councilperson Lee.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Good evening, Bastrop. So this past week, Councilmember Fossler and I and staff was there as well, attended the TML mid-year conference training. A lot of good information, especially on the legislative side. So I was very happy to see that we're going to have a legislative update for you guys tonight on the agenda, because there are a lot of bills on the floor that could change the way we can run the city of Bastrop. So glad to see that we're getting updates on that for you guys. Also wanted to congratulate Carrie Fossler for receiving her certificate of completion, which I believe is 54 credit hours or more. You get a certificate of completion. I also achieved 72 hours, which got me 3 consecutive years in achievement as a certified municipal official. That is really like a graduation ceremony. It's probably the best part of the TML mid-year conference when we all get our awards. I am also told that this was the first year that someone from Bastrop, Smithville, and Elgin achieved certified municipal official status. So TML, very, very important to elected officials. National Walking Day is April the 2nd. Thank you, Cammie, and Parks and Recs for organizing this event. Councilmember Fossler and I will be leading walks. I think Councilmember Fossler is at 9 a.m. east of Eden, and I'll start at Delgado Park at 5 p.m. So it's a great way to walk around the neighborhood and talk to the neighbors, get our bodies moving. And then at 6 p.m. at Fisherman's Park, there's Tails and Trails. Bring your animals on a leash. It says specifically to commune with your neighbors down at Fisherman's Park. And then lastly, I want to thank the city manager and staff. At the last council meeting, I asked the city manager for an update on the erosion at Pecan Park. I was advised by a resident who invited me to come and walk along the shock of that erosion last week, and that the city had come out and fixed some of the drainage issues, or they made some improvements to improve the drainage out there. So thank you for that. I was amazed at the amount of damage that's out there. We literally walked in the grassbergs, through every little pocket of water holes, astonished. So hopefully they are looking forward to seeing what the city can do for them and then working it out through the developers. But that's definitely something that needs to be taken care of. And I appreciate staff for the work that you did out there. It's awesome. I also wanted to thank the city manager for working with the Johnson and Williams family on getting the street signage. Still in progress, but I think we're making headway on that, and we hope to have some finality on that soon. So thank you for your efforts for that, Sylvia.
Okay, we're going to move on to item 6C, the city manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor. You all have already covered the citywide clean sweep. Thank you, Terry Moore, for the stats. We had 180 staff and volunteers, which equaled 645 total hours of effort. And I do want to say this was that Councilmember Fossler brought up, I don't know, maybe over the Thanksgiving holiday. And I explained that in my two prior cities, we had something called the Neighborhood Initiative Program, which we used to call Nip It in the Bud, which all hands on deck. Didn't have a great connotation. And then in Corpus Christi, we had something called City Hall in the Mall. We don't have a mall here, but we may do City Hall on Main or City Hall in the Hood or something. I don't know. We'll think about that as we go. And the intent really is to bring us out to you, not just problem areas, but you can see who we are. You can put a name to a face. You've got some firefighters. We did everything from painting hydrants to sweeping and cleaning to building a playground. And so the beautiful playground at Bob Bryant Park is wonderful. We do have a comprehensive plan. That is April 24th here at City Hall from 4 to 6 p.m. There is a planning and a joint city council meeting that's also open to the public. And then we have our, I'm sorry, I said that the other way around. The workshop that's open to the public is from 4 to 6. And then planning and zoning and the city council have a joint meeting at 6 o'clock on that day. This has been a series of efforts. We've made some significant text updates as it relates to the descriptors of the character districts, et cetera. And as Councilmember Lee pointed out, we did have a TML mid-year conference, and I'm going to show you some bills that are on the next page. Please copy down that URL. There are too many bills to list right now, but we'll do a high-level overview. And again, our microchipping open house is April 2nd from 5:30 to 7, where we talk about the pros and cons of required microchipping versus registration. We do have a survey out there. Overwhelmingly, the results are folks are for microchipping, so we've now got to get creative to buy that $22 cost down for folks that can't afford it. Those are all of the bills, and there's multiple in that case file that affect cities. We have everything from cities in a 90,000 and above bracket being required to not allow lots that are smaller, or I'm sorry, to require lots 1,400 square feet and above. You can't create a lot size minimum that it's, again, these are density type bills. We have property tax, again, some restrictions that they want to put on cities on how much we can raise and whether or not we can raise it and how much everything goes to the voters. We have all kinds of information about open government, our transparency laws, how we post, when we post, notifications to post, which I think is a good thing. purchasing municipal court, there are so many bills. Land use, I think I counted 14 land use bills just alone, which is everything that we're going through right now with our development code changes. So this is TML's number 11 legislative update. So if you haven't seen it, please go take a look at it. Some of those are what I consider to be very harmful to cities, not just from our autonomy perspective, but what they would do to some of our density numbers. Moving on, we have the North End Prairie Town Hall meeting, March 31st, 6 o'clock at the Convention Center.
Can you hold on one second?
Sure.
I recused myself for that.
Oh, okay.
I know you're just announcing it, but.
Yes. It'll be
Thank
very
you.
much like the Gateway. The staff will present the information, the developer will take some Q&A, and then we will take some Q&A from the audience. Curtis and James in our wastewater department toured Castroville and Buda for their reuse type plants last Friday. He's got some good information to report. We do have a new finance director. Judy Sandrusi, will you please stand? So, thank you, Judy. So Judy comes to us from Corpus Christi, having made her way from San Antonio. So welcome, Judy, to staff. She's already hit the ground running, and I will just say, if we've got to go through another finance director, you may have to go through another city manager too, because I can't do it again. Thank you, Judy. So that means you have to stay. Historic bridge update. We did have a number of firms show up to our pre-construction meeting, which is wonderful. We normally only have 1 or 2. We had over 7 firms show up. We did push the bid opening by a week because TxDOT also has some bid openings, and we had some contractors who would be in conflict. So we have bids open on 4/10/2025. So super, super excited about that. And then road maintenance update, you're going to see a presentation coming up that's going to be repetitive of some of this information. Water Street is what I was asked to bring an update on. We do have scope of work and bids out. Our city engineer has been working with our streets director. We are in the May timeframe. Gutierrez to Maine has about a $600,000 opinion of probable cost. That does not include the water and the wastewater. The Curtis and company have already done improvements in that area. And then city secretary update. So our city secretary position is once again vacant. Irma Parker's tenure ended in February of 2025. She's moved on to another city. And so Victoria, our assistant city secretary, and then also the city manager's office, we are all hands on deck getting the agenda out and keeping things in line, especially as we move toward elections.
How is the search for a city secretary going on that item?
We will probably have to adjust the salary. We have a number of applicants. Their experience, I think, is what is keeping us from moving forward. We had an applicant who had committed, who was going to start, and then her city offered a counter, and so she stayed.
Okay. Councilperson Lee?
Thank you. On the 600,000, that's just an opinion of probable cost for that Gutierrez to Main Street. That's just that one street.
Correct.
The 600,000 there. So I have had a lot of people asking me about Linden all week. This has been the topic. There used to be a schedule online where you could see what streets are, and I couldn't find that anywhere. I looked for a good while.
I'm not sure. You're going to see it on the streets presentation. We actually met with the county, who's going to do a small segment of Linden. We did borrow money for Water Farm and Linden, so it's just a matter of letting Curtis's crew do some of the underground work before we come in with the street work. And so we're sort of tied to when Public Works can do some of the work.
So we don't have a set schedule yet.
We're estimating 2026, second half of 2026. If the county can help us with larger sections, then that may go a little bit faster. The county doesn't really want to touch sections that have like a manhole or anything else. They just want to go straight through to be able to.
And are you saying 2026 just for Linden, or, because I was looking for, like, it used to be like it would show you what streets.
I'll get you an updated
yeah,
schedule.
were listed.
I'll make sure we post an updated
But are
schedule.
you saying Linden is 2026?
It's Farmer Linden, I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'll have to get an updated schedule.
And then on the North End Prairie, So I went back, I was looking for how we came up with the character district, so I started looking back at some old council meetings, and in 2019, there was a very lengthy discussion about the North End, under Linda Humble at that time, and the council members at that time were very concerned and interested at the lack of interest in North End, and they all had ideas because the North End has some P4 commercial businesses, and they were talking about how we can develop North End out because of that. And there was talk of traditional zoning, it was pretty lengthy. And then at the end of the discussion, it was stated that council at the time was going to come back and actually do a deep dive into looking at the North End and how to develop that out. So my ask is, now that we are looking more at the North End, in addition to the town hall that's coming up, I'd like to see us schedule some type of forum to actually go back and look at what was previously thought we could do with North End and have a broader discussion. As well as Old Town. I've talked to a few people in Old Town. In the Old Town area, one of the primary concerns is the streets. With the amount of traffic that we're now getting in our hopping downtown area, a lot of those people are parking on their grass in their right-of-ways. So that may be something else we want to look at, is doing a forum for Old Town and the North End of town to look at how and I actually transcribed that meeting so I can get a copy for you of what was actually said. And I thought there was one more thing, the road maintenance, I think that's pretty much it. Thank you so much. And thank you again for the Pecan Park. For getting the Pecan Park
Oh, sure,
drainage.
that's been Mr. Beggs is here. Mr. Beggs can tell you, Robert and I were, Robert, we happened to be driving there when we were looking for a home.
They told me.
Yeah, no, we walked in it during a rainstorm.
Yeah.
And when they told me there were white caps, I was like, white caps, I have it on video.
Yeah, I saw it. It's really, really bad. One home had the bricks that you buy from Home Depot stuck in the holes. I was shocked. I was astonished. So thank you for helping them with that.
Councilperson Meyer.
Thank you. Let me just also comment on that, because I do remember last year, Mr. Beck, you and your wife would always come to the meetings to sit with Sylvia, and you have been so
Patient.
Yes, very patient and understanding. But when we did see, and when you posted that video, Sylvia, last year, it was amazing. So thank you all for understanding, consideration, and knowing that we are trying as hard as we can. And Sylvia, thank you, Sylvia, too, for doing that.
So I do want to give the HOA, so council, the update is that the HOA, so our warranty period expired for the maintenance. The HOA still had a year warranty when about the time I came on board. So the HOA is currently doing some repairs, but only in the HOA section. Only in the HOA section. We've done repairs to the outfall. We will come back and do some stabilization also.
Do some stabilization
We have to.
on their side, on our side. And whatever they do on their side, will we have an engineer go out and inspect it?
They will give us an engineering report.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on to item 6D, Proclamation 2025 National Wildlife Foundation Mayor's Monarch Pledge, which I have here in front of me. Whereas during the spring, monarch butterflies can travel over 2,500 miles from their overwintering site in Mexico to summer breeding grounds from the northern United States into southern Canada. And whereas in the late summer, monarchs born up north return to Mexico to the same mountainous region and same trees where their ancestors congregated the winter before. And whereas Central Texas is part of the funnel that monarchs pass through during both trips. And whereas in the spring, monarchs from Mexico look for milkweeds to lay eggs upon, creating the next generation that will travel north. And whereas in the fall, monarchs look for flower nectar to refuel on their way to Mexico. And whereas due to the use of herbicides and pesticides, habitat conversion, and adverse land management, monarch populations have declined about 80% in recent decades. And whereas the City of Bastrop is within this funnel, perfectly located to assist this annual monarch migration and to help reverse this trend. Whereas through the National Wildlife Federation's Mayor's Monarch Pledge, U.S. cities, municipalities, and other communities are committing to creating habitats for the monarch butterfly and pollinators, and to educating residents about how they can make a difference at home and in their community. Now, therefore, I, John Kirkland, acting Mayor Pro Tem of the City of Bastrop, Texas, do hereby pledge to join the National Wildlife Foundation Mayor's Monarch Pledge, striving to make Bastrop a destination for monarchs and other pollinators. And I have signed this with the seal of the city on the 25th day of March, 2025. So this is this proclamation. And now we will move on to item 7A under work sessions and briefings for the wastewater workshop summary.
Was there anybody here for the Monarch Challenge that may have wanted a photo?
Well, Terry Moore is here.
Well, yeah. I'm not doing the work. Nancy's here. She's
Yes.
part of the committee. This is actually the third consecutive year that Bastrop's been part of this. So you see lots of things going on up front and everything. It's very cool.
Yes,
Thank
please.
you.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. There's a picture, and if you want to say anything, please.
There you go.
Okay, item 7A, wastewater workshop summary submitted by Curtis Hancock.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem Council. I was asked to bring back some flow data for y'all, and the worksheets that I worked up for, so y'all know, it wasn't on accident. I put them in two different brackets. It's the east and west plant, 1 and 2 and 3 out west. It's important to know where it is. As we go along, you'll see that plant 1, you'll see the aging of the plants 1 and 2. That's the ones at 300 Water Street that we're trying to do rehab on. The first one, plant 1, was put in 1988. It actually called plant 1 because plant 2 was the first one built in Bastrop here. It was put in 1975 at that location. Of course, plant 3, y'all know as well. It came online May 7th of 24. The plants 1 and 2 are aging, and we're going to hit that mark of that 75% for long. It's important to understand that when you hit 75%, you have to be in planning design of the new plants, and that when you hit 90% capacity, you have to be in construction. So with that, and then there's a few notes on there to show y'all how we got to where we was at. An LUE is a unit times 235, which is gallons. That's a national average. We're somewhere around that 317 gallons per, if we actually use that number, and then with the peaking factor of 4.
Curtis, so I'm going to stop you, just so everybody understands. A living unit equivalent is regardless of size. It's a household.
Yeah.
235 is actually the national average, but as Curtis stated, we're actually a little bit higher. And the peaking factor is when almost everybody in town turns on their shower. You know, it's early in the morning, it's, you know, late in the afternoon, late in the evening when folks are home. And so when we calculate, we have to calculate not just for the normal usage, but we've got to be able to take in those peaks.
Which y'all know what they are, the 3, morning, noon, and night, is when you hit your big factors. We broke it out into the first slide. You can see what we did is, well, put on here was because they have site plans. If they didn't have a site plan, I didn't include them because there's so many unknowns to a project. And I wanted y'all to have a realistic look at what's happening quick, not that way down the line, what's happening now. And as you can see, there were 3 projects, Steel Yard, River Terrace, and then a hotel being built, Courtyard Marriott, which added up to, it's going to hit in 2026, and it's going to add an additional 156,980 gallons of flow per day to our wastewater plants 1 and 2, putting it at 956,980 gallons a day. Plants 1 and 2 are permitted for 1.4, which 75% of 1.4 is 0.105. So there would be still a little buffer there, but as you can see, it would be not far down the road when anything else come on. With that being said, is where that comes in involved is At some point, we're going to have to look at this side, are we going to add another plant? Or are we going to add a transfer lift station? For me, my advice to y'all is I would add a plant. Because when you're adding a plant, you're adding capacity to this side. But what you're also doing is saving capacity in your system over there. Because at some point in time, you got to remember, treatment plant 3, the collection lines was designed at 8 million gallons. So anything that we can keep on this side, it'll save that much area for that side to grow. And it will save us money and give us time to be able to install new infrastructure instead of trying to do both.
I want council to understand that also, is to move this plant and to move everything also requires infrastructure. We had a plan for transfer lift station at one point in time. We didn't have all of the land acquisition. The project wasn't fully planned out. And had we completed that process, let's say everything fell in line at one time and we had transferred flows, we'd be at capacity at our new plant. So, you know, God has been good to Bastrop. Little accidents have helped us. We also moved ARPA funds who were going to be used for that transfer lift station. And so we've been through a bid process for rehabilitation. It came in too high. Curtis is scrubbing it. Legal has told us we scrubbed it too much and it's got to go back out. And so we're in the process of doing that as well. We've got a little bit of time. Things aren't growing as fast to the east, but that is a matter of time. If something like the Gateway or something large were to come on that east side of town, they would have to participate in some additional construction. Here's a scary one.
Yeah, it is very scary. Wastewater treatment 3 flows, as y'all can see, it's a large amount of coming in over there. A lot coming in between now and 2028, and still it's going to be coming on West Bastrop Village, and Valverde will still be building into 29 and 30, but the rest of it is already pretty much in. And you can see the amount of flows and how it grows each year with that target that's circled there in 2026 at 2.9. So that tells you right now that we need to start moving. A normal plant, you're looking at 18 to 24 months, build a design with a 3-year guaranteed construction time. People can say they can do it in 2, that we know they can't. We lived it. So the good thing is we're looking at plants now. The quality of the effluent is excellent. Smaller footprint, design and construction, 18 months. I mean, that speaks volume. Speaks volume.
Here's my additional slide that Curtis doesn't know I put in there. So this is directly from our capital improvement budget. At one point in time, you saw the impact fee presentation, a 6 million gallon wastewater treatment plant, which he just told you our infrastructure is built 8. He just told you that. So you guys approved the impact fees to an additional 6, plus the 2 that's already there. That's where we get the 8. In our capital improvement, we say that's a $200 million expense, with only 16 million of that being recoupable. So, you know, that's what keeps me up at night. So, that's why we had to go look at new technology. That's why we have to be on not bleeding edge, but cutting edge. We've got to do something different that monetizes the plant as opposed to being a very large sucking sound out of the budget that ends up being passed on by the ratepayers. The wastewater treatment plant 1 and 2, that's the information. We're hoping to rebid it and it come in between 2 and 4 million. That will buy us some additional time because that plant hasn't had a good, what I'm going to call cleaning scrubbing. So there's some room that's wasted from just sand and infiltration. We call it I&I that comes in. Additionally, the reuse plant, that is about a $60 million expense, and as Curtis stated, it is 18-month process. It's a prefabbed, I don't want to call it a tinker toy, but they are prefabbed, and they are plug and play, so you can build one and add until we get to our 8 million total. The other issue is we have consistently talked about our partnership with Corex and our partnership with other CCN providers that as they need us to help serve, they will also help to pay the cost. I would be lying if I told you this was the last wastewater treatment plant expansion that you'll see in your lifetime, because we will probably end up seeing something north of the river within the next 10 years, would be my imagine. There's so much raw land up there now that future development of that would really put us into wastewater treatment plant number 4.
I have a question about the reuse. So it's 60 million for just the plant, the wastewater treatment plant, because in order for us to make money off of it, we got to get the EO or do the chlorine tank, which is more. Do we know what that more would be? Because what I've asked around about it, that EO is very expensive. I haven't been given a number. I've just been told it's very expensive.
So 2 different things. So right now, we're just talking wastewater. What you're referring to is additional treatment for water.
Right, no, you were saying that you wanted to go this route so that we can make money off
Sure.
of it, because and that's where we make the money off of it, in part, is reusing the water as clean water.
Well, also via effluent. So we don't have a purple pipe program here. Hopefully, at the next council meeting, when you see the Ironwood Development Agreement, we'll have some discussion about purple pipe, about using that effluent for the parks and using that for more irrigation, because irrigation really takes up about 60 to 70% of the water supply, especially in the hotter months. So how much it would take, we need to do a cost benefit, because there are water providers such as Aqua who would love to purchase the effluent and then retreat it themselves. Curtis visited Castroville and Buda.
Castroville, they have a smaller plant. It's a subdivision plant, but they was putting theirs in a tank and actually serving 300 houses there through Purple Pipe program through their plant. There's a lot of good things about that plant. I have to tell you, we know that the levels are going to change with TCQ. We know phosphorus is coming down the line. This plant will treat phosphorus. The plant brand new plant we have, it will not. We will be adding chemicals to take phosphorus out. And I don't know if y'all are like me, but I don't like the chemicals. I don't like anything to go back into our river. So it's pretty personal. I grew up on the river here and care about it, and so that's a big positive for me.
Curtis, can you go back one slide, please?
Yes.
Oh, you're not controlling the slides. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so 2026 freaks me out. More specifically, in that year, we hit 75%, 90%, and then 150% of our total capacity for the wastewater treatment plant. And in order to avoid the impossibility of that number, we need to break ground on the new one in 2 weeks.
It will be on your April 8th meeting. You will have an Omnia contract, which is the federal national purchasing buy board. And then at the second meeting in April, we will be talking about potential funding sources. Everything from a lease buyback
But
to...
that's not fast enough to hit that.
These are also peak factors.
Okay.
These are also assuming everything is perfect and interest rates stay and the developers do what they tell us they're going to do when they're going to do it. So, yes, I hyperventilate a lot. I hyperventilate more at the 200 million number.
Well, that's a big deal too, but, you know.
Yes, yes.
They all go hand in hand.
Yes.
Okay, so tell me again, we're going to see something.
So on April the 8th, you will
Right.
see what is called an Omnia contract. It is our federal buy board contract that this reuse plant is on. So we go direct to, in old terms, we used to call it design build, where they've designed it as they build it. Now these are pretty much prefabricated plants, and so they will go up pretty quickly. What we need to make a determination is how much of that 60 do we bite off? And so we'll come back with some potential funding scenarios. You've already approved the impact fees, and so when you add the impact fees to these numbers, so for example, Pearl River Sundet will do $200 times 8,200, and that's just Sundet paying the impact fee. That's 1.6, and then so on and so forth with each of these. So we've got some good revenue flows to help pay the debt. My goal is to keep it off the backs of the ratepayers.
Yeah.
You can all lose sleep at night tonight with me.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Any other questions, council? Okay, thank you, Curtis.
Thank you. If y'all think of something, just give me a holler.
We're going to move on to item 8A, receive a presentation on the unaudited financial statement as of February 28, 2025. Ms. Allen.
Good evening, council. I will happily pull out any slide that you would like to view directly, but here's a overview of February financials. I'm happy to report that all fund revenues are in the green with the exception of the general fund debt service and the Hunters Crossing PID. That's strictly based on projection and the timing. Those are funded through property tax proceeds, and I really would like for us to look at those projections and maybe make them a little bit more accurate. Other than that, all funds are in the green compared to projections. I'm very happy to announce that impact fee revenues are 25% above projected forecast.
Yay. First time.
I feel like we need a little confetti popper, and that's due to Pearl River and D.R. Horton coming online and those things developing out.
And also hard work by your city council, right?
It was Kevin. He did it. No, he said hard work by your city council. Yes.
Sales tax proceeds to actuals continue to run extremely close to forecasts. For the month of February, we did collect $180K over projection. What we received in February was actually sales tax collected in December. So it is kind of anticipated that that would be a little bit more of a higher proceed in sales tax. Property tax proceeds are over forecast by approximately $190K. And March will also exceed forecasts in regards to property tax proceeds. Wastewater proceeds exceed the forecast by 7.85%, which is nice. Electric revenue is running very tight to forecast. I'm going to continue to contribute that to a low winter. We probably won't say the same thing about summer. Hot proceeds are exceeding forecast by $275K. And development services revenue is exceeding forecast by 43%. In regards to expenditures, all expenses in the general fund and enterprise are in the green. Both general fund, water, wastewater fund expenditures are running 98% to forecast. Electric expenses are 2% below forecast, which contribute to the fund's positive bottom line, anticipating their revenue. Hot funds are 100% to forecast. Right now, that's just due because there's a pending budget amendment. It was presented on the March 11th, and it appears on y'all's consent agenda again tonight. So that number will improve come the March financials. And development services expenses are currently running 100% to forecast. Also, I would like to let council know that staff does anticipate making some changes to y'all's financial reporting upcoming with the implementation of the Open Gov. It gives us some more flexibility with reporting. I think we can improve our transparency in the data that we give y'all. So over the next few months, there'll be changes. So we look forward to any feedback that y'all may have on information that you would like to see different or not see.
Okay, thank you. Council, any questions? Thank you very much. Item 8B, review and discuss the Bastrop Public Library and the Streets and Drainage Fund. Says Madam City Manager. Excellent.
Good evening, council. I'm going to show you lower numbers than you've been seeing. How about that? Okay. So this is our 5-year history of our revenue and our expenses. We don't make a lot of money, but I just wanted to fill in what our revenue actually is. It would be membership. It would also be anything that we charge for, copies, printing, damaged or lost materials. And then we also receive 2 grants every year. One is from the Texas State Library. It is an interlibrary loan reimbursement grant. Depends on how many interlibrary loans we have. We get a percentage of the postage that we send out for those loans. So really depends on how many books we use for interlibrary loan system. The second grant that we receive every year is our E-rate Internet Reimbursement Fund, and it comes from the Federal Communications Commission. That's about $7,000 a year. So that is what our blue revenue is. When you take out the personnel expense, which is the largest portion of our budget, we have 10.75 FTEs. When you take out personnel, we are left with about $156,000. And we divide that pretty equally between operations, programs and services, and materials. Real quickly, run through those categories. I don't have a lot of time. I could talk really long for all of this, in case you didn't know, but I will be super quick. Okay, operations, utilities, and all of our software to help us actually run the library, equipment, like our AED, water cooler, copiers. This operations is for our travel and training and also for any kind of professional or institutional memberships that we have. Programming and services, I certainly hope that everyone knows that we do a lot of programming at the library. For those who don't know, we do programs for all ages, children, adults, and youth. Last year, in fiscal year 24, our programming increased 81% over our programming in 23, and that is because we added 2 programming people, so that was terrific. Those were filling empty positions. We did not add positions. Under programming, it also includes outreach. We have a couple of partnerships with Bluebonnet Mental Health. We go and visit their Parents as Teachers fair. We visit Circa. We visit elementary schools for literacy nights. We also have groups coming into the library, and we highlight our services, provide story times, and other instruction. And we have summer coming up. Last year, we had 145 programs in 9 weeks. I don't think we have quite that many this year. But we still have 2 months until it actually starts, so we could have more. All right, services is where I wanted to spend my time because this is part of what happens at the library that we don't really talk about very much, but this is where we spend a lot of our time. Services are our computers, our public Wi-Fi, our hotspots. This is where we do our reference services, which means if someone comes into the library, we help them out. It's tech help, it's setting up emails, it's not just finding books. It's a lot of work. We also do one-on-one help called Tech Tutors, and we proctor tests, and we do interlibrary loan. We provide magazines and newspapers. We have 86 databases that we get from the Texas State Library, and that has career resources, homework help, and also Spanish language resources. In addition to all that, we do printing, copying, faxing, scanning, and soon, hopefully, notary services. That brings us to materials. We have physical materials and digital materials, special collections for local history, local authors, cake pans, puzzles, and bilingual materials. I know, cake pans. Everybody's excited about cake pans. I know. Our money for our material gets divided up into 10 separate categories, several splits for adults, teens, and children, and then it also goes to ebooks and e-audiobooks. All right, so that is how we divide our money. So this year, I would like to ask for a person, a part-time person, because of the programming that we have gone up, because of all the programming that we have going on, It would really help to have a part-time clerk that just does the circulation desk. I know that other departments also will be asking for personnel, and that it is highly possible that I will not get anybody, but it didn't hurt to ask. The other budget increases are strictly operational, cost of business kind of things. I don't have anything big this year that will change in my budget. Our obstacles for the future, of course, personnel, just like every other city department. As the city grows, people demand more services. We're going to need some more people. The other pieces on that obstacles, I put ebooks and e-audiobook cost. This is really an education part. I don't know that everyone knows that for libraries, it's not the same for purchasing ebooks. If you go to Amazon and you purchase an ebook for $15, it's yours. For libraries, an ebook, the same ebook, could cost us $50 to $75, and it's metered, which means we get 24 checkouts or 24 months, whichever comes first. And then it just goes away, and we have to buy another copy. It's a huge expense, considering that we can get a hard copy of a bestseller for $20 to $25, but that same book in a digital format is going to be $50, $75, maybe even more. So that is a huge obstacle, not just for our library, but for libraries all across the country. And then the last is our meeting and programming space. We are getting pretty close to being maxed out. Our rooms are very busy. We get asked often for spaces that we don't have. We do not have any spaces for meetings that are 4 to 6 people, and that is what we get asked for. So I put this up on the slide just to keep you aware that we are busy, and as the city grows, something else besides water, we're going to need to think about expanding our library services. And that is all I have for you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, are there any questions?
Yes, I have a question. On the ebooks,
Yes.
Can a citizen sponsor the purchase of one?
I suppose technically you could give us a donation for a book. We belong to a consortium, so
Right.
all of our money goes into that consortium. We can buy through the consortium. So technically, yes, you could make a donation and we could purchase the book through
And
the consortium.
In that process, is there any way to guarantee that that person can check it out first if it's a high-demand book that's not available? No, I mean, if you know, it'd be one
Very
of those
good
things
question.
like, I'd be willing to buy
Right.
this to share with 23 other people,
Right.
but I don't want to buy it and then have it taken away and then I can't check it out myself, you know?
So very good question. When you donate money for an actual physical book, we can right away put it on reserve for you so that you're the first one that gets it.
Right.
An ebook, we belong to the Central Texas Digital Consortium. Through that, there are several different ways that you can join. We are an Advantage client, and so that means we can purchase materials and we can designate them specifically for our patrons. Mm-hmm. Can I guarantee that you're going to get it first? Not with the consortium. I cannot.
Got
But I can definitely put it as an Advantage book, so only our patrons can get it. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
Mm-hmm.
Councilperson Meyer.
I just wanted to thank you, Bonnie, and your staff too, but I
Thank
wanted
you.
to tell you that I hear from the citizens how much they really enjoy those programmings, and I appreciate y'all doing that, and it's about community, so just a big thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, we work really hard and we try to do what we need for the community.
Councilperson Lee.
Thank you. Yes, so I serve as the liaison for the library board, and those meetings are very, very interesting, and the amount of programming that they offer the community is almost overwhelming. And it's not just children's programming, it's adult programming. There's a lot of adult programming and opportunities for people I went one day and people were just chilling out in the back reading books as a quiet space. So thank you for all that you do and your staff and the board. The board works very hard and they're very passionate about the library. Can you explain to the council the situation with if someone donates money, what that process is like? Because we've talked about that during the board meetings and how money goes to the general fund. There's no actual fund for the library for
Okay,
considerable
so
donations.
actually, there is a donation fund for the library. It is the 505 fund. You will see it when we do budgeting. It is a designated fund for the library. So when you donate money, it goes into that designated fund. It's not part of the general fund. If you pay for copies, if you come and pay for a lost book, that goes to the general fund. But if you donate directly to the library, it does go into the donation fund, and we have access only to it. It is designated for our use. Yeah.
And then one of the other things that the board wanted to make sure council keeps in the back of their mind is in regard to the space.
Right.
The board has been looking, along with Commissioner Parsons, on possible satellite options, especially with the new developments that are coming in, that are putting in maybe, retail underneath the apartments or what have you, looking at some of that space and where we might be able to house a satellite office. They're working on what a satellite office might look like, but
Right.
they're having discussions every meeting about the need for more space and what that might look like as far as our comprehensive plan is concerned.
Right, and that is part of bringing this to you today, just to let you know that we are already thinking about it. I know that the city has a lot of issues with growth, and so I know that sometimes I feel like I'm at the bottom of the pile, but I recognize that water and flushing the toilet and putting on the lights is very, very important, and I'm not going to ever say that that's not. But we are busy, and I anticipate we will get busier. I am tracking our stats. We are a little bit busier every year. And so, yes, we are talking about ways to show and ways to prove that we would need a branch in some location. That is as far as it's gotten so far. Yeah. Anything else?
That's the last slide.
All right, this is the last
Okay.
slide, and now it's up to John.
Thank you, Bonnie.
Just that one right there.
Let's give it a try. Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and Council.
So before you get started,
Yes.
Is the street and drainage fund included as part of Public Works? Is it separate? How does that come together?
Well, he's about to tell you on his first slide.
Perfect.
They're now all divided.
You want to go to that slide with the
You're on it
breakup?
now.
Okay. The notable changes is Public Works used to be a conglomerate of a lot of different departments, and it was broken up into 4 separate departments beginning in FY '24. So streets and drainage has become out of the, it's not in the general fund anymore. It has its own account, so it's self-sustaining. We get money from EDC, 3/8 of a cent, streets, 3.2 million for existing streets. And then the impact fee that's going into effect, that's for brand new streets. We have 16 full-time employees. We're fully staffed. The street has 2 different crews. Each one has 6 members on each one. The cemetery has only 1 member, but I have one of my street guys with them every day because it's just too much for one person. So his salary comes out of streets. So that's the goal one day, maybe to get another person in the cemetery, and then so I can put another person back on streets. But that's one of the goals. This budget here is when we have when we were in the general fund. So you have all the different years there. And you'll notice that 24-25 is nothing because that's when we switched. So this is the new budget under the 110. And no real changes except for some of the lines went up. We added some for paving, seal coat, so different lines that wasn't in the general fund is into this new one. So this budget is larger. This is Water Street, the one that's been the hot topic. I have shown this project to 3 different contractors, and they're all TxDOT contractors, so they're very good businesses. They've given me a price from Gutierrez Street to Chestnut Street. And I visit with the city engineer here, Tiger Davis. We've rolled the project, and he agrees with me in the way that we want to pursue it, and that's to take down 8 inches of the existing material, stay at that same elevation because everything seems to work, the cross streets and all that seems to work real good. So we'll go back to the same elevation, but we'll go down 8 inches and take that material out, proof roll it, look for any bad spots in the subgrade, and then we'll go back with 6 inches of type B hot mix. And it'll sit. It'll take two days to do the milling operation and going back with the 6 inches of B. So every night that section will be 2 inches low, but it'll be a taper so you can drive on it. So the streets will be open. So in the 3rd and final day, they'll do the final paving of the 2 inches to get it back to this existing elevation. It's very expensive. With traffic control and the lowest bid that I have, it's around $70 a square yard, which is a lot of money, but you've got to take in consideration how deteriorated the street is, and Curtis's crew went through and put some new water lines and stuff, so now this section is ready to get the street part done. We do have a geotech firm. They're going to do some coring for us to take some samples and see if they agree with how we want to pave the street back, if they agree that that's the best way to do it. And so we'll see what their results are, and they already know the kind of scope of work that we want to do. So I've done this work at Lockhart, and I never had any trouble. Everything worked good. We've done this kind of work for years at TxDOT, so it's a good theory. The only thing that you don't want to do is you don't want to mill too far down and get out of the gravel and get into dirt. So that's what this coring deal is going to tell us, is just exactly what's there, and see if this 8 inches is going to stay above the dirt line. I know y'all have been talking about water and Linden and Farm.
Next slide.
Those will be we'll just have to wait until Curtis gets his part done before we go in with our streets. I know Curtis has some pipe bursting on Water Street, the next section. So we'll have to wait till that part gets done, so then we can move in. There is, like Sylvia said, there is a part of Linden that the county could do for us with their type of material that they use, machines. Like Sylvia said, they don't want to work around manholes and valves, because when you mill up a street and you pave it, you're only messing with that manhole and valve one time to mill it and relay it. But when you do it the way the county does, you're tearing up the road, mixing new base with it, so you're constantly blading back and forth, so you always have the chance of disturbing that manhole or that valve. And so it's just more easier. That's why the county likes out in the country where there's nothing out. But here in town, we have a lot of valves. There is a section of Farm Street. I
Next
meet
slide,
with
John.
the county on Main Street. It's going to be from Farm Street from Main to Fisherman's Park. That section doesn't have any valves or manholes. So their type of process would work. And all we do with the county in our interlocal agreement is we pay for the materials. So you've seen the product that they did for us at Hoffman, how nice that turned out. They did some streets, Lover's Lane, some streets in Tahitian. That type of work is $8 a square yard. So it's a big difference, because they're providing the material, the labor, and we're just doing the materials. So it's a big cost-effective way to do it, but it does take longer to do it. It's about a 3-week process. Once you start tearing up that street and get it back to a seal coat, it could turn into 3 weeks real easy, weather determining. I am going to do some streets this year for HA5. We have a contract, it's $850,000, going to do 49 streets. The square yards for it is 185,609. So if you do the math, the price per square yard is $458. So it's a big difference. And so that's why you have to do this kind of product on streets that are scoring at least a 75 and up to 80, the streets that are not like water. Y'all have noticed that we did a lot of HA5 on a lot of seal coat streets around here. And you'll notice when we do pecan, it's going to look nicer because it's over a hot mix street. So it's going to pop a little better, shine a little better. On a seal coat street, you don't have a uniform, even ride all the way across. You've got like the bumps and the gaps of the rock and stuff, so there's little crevices everywhere. But on a hot mix street, it'll look so much nicer. You'll really like it. We're going to do streets in Tahitian. We're going to do streets in a whole part of town, but the biggest one is Pecan. That's that whole subdivision, so it's going to be real nice for that neighborhood. This will be the third subdivision we've done. We've done Riverside Grove, Piney Creek Bend, and Hunter's Crossing, so this will be the third one. This is the Pecan Park. We had an emergency contract that we hired. The PO was $235,000 for this company to come in, and they did a project on Church and Buttonwood. It consisted of removing 350 feet of pipe, and the pipe was in different types of material all the way through that whole block. So we pulled it out. We put 350 feet of RCP, which is concrete pipe. We put a box inlet in with a grate on top. So if you'll notice in big storms and rainstorms now, it doesn't pond water in the street like it used to. So it's really worked good. This is the second location under that PO, Pecan Park. One of the things in sandier soils, when water falls at that head fall up there where where the water comes out of that pipe, it's 3.4 foot of a fall till it got down to level ground. So when all that force was coming out of that pipe and it hits that soily material, it was making washouts and eroding stuff. So we dropped that down and made it flat. So there's some baffles up there to slow the water down. The concrete is, I think, 46 foot long, so it's going to work good. We put mats on the side. He's got it planted with seed and fertilized, so it'll start greening up and looking good. His other project for us is Sterling. I think right before I got here in July, there was a fire in one of the storm drains. And so we're going to go in there and replace some of the pipe that are in there. The pipe is about 60 inches. It's a tall pipe. So that's his last deal. But 2 of the locations out of the 3 are completed. It's on budget. He's doing real good work for us. This is the project that I was talking about. This was his first location. So that's at, the first picture is at Church and Wilson, and the second one is right there at those head walls right there that he built where the pipe comes out. But like I said, the intersection is really draining good, and it seems to be working good. That was it. Long-winded. Any questions?
I think a question that I have has to do with the tax collection on road maintenance. We get various reports from the finance officials that tell us about tax collection levels for EDC, for council, for the various funds. And I know that on EDC, which is kind of our benchmark for what this value is because it came from, it should be 4 times what we're getting on EDC. And the EDC taxes are coming in higher than expected. And this number, at least it budgeted, is lower than even what, we said it was going to be 1.1 million for EDC and 3.3 for streets, and we budgeted 3.1 for streets. It wouldn't surprise me if we were actually collecting 4 for streets based upon the numbers coming in for EDC. So anyway, I'd like to see the I don't know, the monthly breakdown of what we're receiving in the taxes in this fund, or whatever we're going to call this thing, because it's not in any of the reports that we get.
Okay, I'll run a specialized report. And I want to augment John's comment about his funding sources. He actually has 4 funding sources. I keep reminding him because we've got to keep finance straight also. So we have a borrow that we did for Water Farm in Linden. So he's got a capital expense that he charges to until those funds are depleted. Then he does have general fund expense because streets used to be in the general fund and streets borrowed money. So that's still a general fund expense. You won't see a revenue line associated with it, maybe a transfer in, but it just is going to go pay for the debt that the general fund borrowed. Then you have the street tax for existing streets, and then you have the impact fee for new streets. So he actually has 4 funding sources that 2 of them should be pretty steady, but the other will fluctuate as we take on projects or, God forbid, take on debt.
Okay, thank you. Oh, sorry. No, there's 2 lights on. Councilperson Meyer, you had yours
Thank
on
you.
first.
So, John and Sylvia, I just want our residents or citizens to understand that first part, Gutierrez to Chestnut, that's a 600K. That's to Chestnut Street. That's not from Chestnut Street heading north, because those are the people on water. We hear you. We know you're on the north side, and you need that too. So on that timeline, Sylvia, was that, I think, Farm, Linden, and north from Chestnut, 2026?
So we have a, so let me back up. The prior plans were a complete reconstruction, ripping up the streets. We don't have the money for that. We're investigating alternative sources, including pipe bursting, so we don't have to go rip it up. And so he's got some bids out for pipe bursting along 71 that we're going to try to just aggregate all together so they can also do that section of water. There's some small sections of wastewater repair that have to happen, and then water, the second part of water will be ready.
Great.
Oh, I thought that was good.
Thank you.
Councilperson Fossler.
Yes, I have a question on page 38 of the packet. I know you don't have it, John, but maybe Sylvia, do you have the packet in front of you?
I do.
Awesome. Will you look it up, please? The operational salaries for 2023-24. Is that an error?
Yeah,
It went from 650. Okay, I'm just want to make sure it gets corrected for the next one. Operational salaries went from 654,000 to 6 million in a year. I think it was just an extra 6, but I do want to make sure
That's
it
an
goes
extra
away.
6,
Okay,
yes.
awesome. I was like, you got some good hires in there. You are fully staffed. Thank you.
Okay, so we are now going to move on to citizen comments. We're going to start off with Debbie Moore, who wishes to speak.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, Council. I'm not here to talk about anything that's as sexy as streets and paving and stuff like that.
Name and address, please.
I'm sorry, Debbie Moore, 1306 Church Street in Bastrop. I just wanted to bring up a few things that I have noticed in being sometimes a not-so-casual observer while y'all are busy doing stuff. One thing I wanted to talk to you about is when we have our meetings. I was in the council chambers many, many years ago when the council meetings went from 6 to 6:30 because there was a sitting council member who worked in Austin and had a hard time getting here for 6 o'clock. So the council changed it to 6:30 on the second and fourth Tuesdays of the month, and that was set in concrete for a lot of years. I know you've had a lot to do lately, but now we have council meetings that are not even on Tuesdays, and sometimes they're earlier and sometimes they're later. And it's hard for somebody that works in Austin to get here, and especially somebody that has kids to take care of or a job to get ready to go to the next day, to really know when to come and when they can participate. So when we can go back to the regular Tuesdays at 6:30, I think it would help people to participate more fully. And even some of the council, I mean, the commission members like P&Z has met other days than at the fourth Thursday of the month. And when people can't count on something like that, they don't tend to participate as much. And so unless there's a real need, I would urge you to go back to where it came from. And also, when our previous mayor was in office, I think you made some changes to the rules of procedure, and it limited some things that the mayor could do. So now that we have a Mayor Pro Tem acting as the mayor, I don't know if those need to be changed before you go back, before we have a fully elected mayor, or, because I know you wouldn't want to do anything that would violate those rules. So I'm just asking a question more than making a comment on that one. And also, when there are things of particular interest to citizens, I would hope that you would be able to take those up earlier in the evening. Sometimes they come at the end of the agenda, and sometimes those agendas run late. So if you could get them earlier in the day, I think it would help people to participate and feel they were more involved. And especially when we have a consultant that's on the time clock that we're paying for. Get them in and get them out. Let them make the reports and then get on out. And also, unless there's really a problem, please have meetings here. I've not been the sound is a problem at the convention center. I wasn't even able to hear one meeting that we had over there. So when you can, please have it here. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Moore. Next is Herb Goldsmith.
I really don't like that clock. I don't.
Name and address.
Herb Goldsmith, 1105 Pecan Street, which would be relevant for 10A. So I'm here to discuss something because of watching the council hearings. There's been a lot of mention of form-based code. And I want to make the distinction that the form-based code that we're generally referring to, and I could be wrong, but is the B3 code. It is not the original form-based code that the City of Bastrop had. A task force was put together as a result of the Sustainable Design Assessment Team grant for the city to discuss the vision of downtown. It was recommended that we examine smart code. A task force was arranged, 8 members, 4 of them from various commissions, 1 from the North End, general public, and a city council member person. A lot of work was done in those years. From 2013, when it was formalized, to 2015, when it was ratified by resolution, the members met every month, sometimes 2 times a month, came up with the code, which was widely accepted. I have a document here for Mayor Pro Tem, which shows all the work that went into it, the meetings, the media, the public hearings, everything. People were generally very happy. The problem was, all of a sudden, it was in effect, no complaints. Building moratorium came in 2018. New city manager decided that they didn't want to we had done the area from College to the North End, river, to the 95. Make a long story short, it was a great, great effort. One of the last things that we did was, after the adoption, was we did look at the North End. We actually took our consultant, Gateway Planning, went to the North End, did SWOT analysis, public meetings. A lot of really good stuff came out of that, for which I have copies of the final memorandum that was prepared for the city council. It didn't really go anywhere. Not sure why. I think part of the outcome with form-based code was also a vast improvement of drainage, because in order to expand, infill, et cetera, we were looking at those issues, things with Gills Branch, other things were all presented in the report, all widely accepted. In fact, we won. We were recognized by both the regional and state levels for exemplary community planning by the Texas chapter of the American Planning Association. Just want to make that distinction because there were a lot of great people on that task force. We worked very hard. We looked at the North End and just want to make sure we understand We weren't B3. Another ballgame. I will leave for you a summary of, and I will actually email all of you the final resolution, but I have copies of the North End report, one for each of you and Sylvia. And then
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Goldsmith. Next is Ingrid Guerrero. Thank you. Name and address.
Okay, Ingrid Cuero, Austin 10800 Lakeline Boulevard, Austin, Texas. Okay. Mayor, City Council members, my name is Ingrid. I'm the high school field representative for Turning Point USA here in Bastrop, Texas. So Turning Point is a student-led organization that emphasizes the importance of capitalism and free market in high schools and colleges. I'm the high school field representative, and so I try to start Turning Point chapters in high schools. And here in these Turning Point chapters, we discuss discussion about policy, and we have tabling events, and we have speakers all throughout the semester and year. So currently, we're doing a Letters to Veterans initiative in our high schools, and currently right now, we're looking to see if there's any opportunity where any high schoolers over here would be interested in joining our initiative. So by setting up a table during the lunch hour, students would have the opportunity to write letters to our veterans. It's a great opportunity for students to honor our local veterans here in Bastrop, Texas. My manager, Ricky, who stepped out, and I have been going to a few schools for this initiative and are still looking. So if you know of any principal, counselor, or administrator who would be open to the initiative, please don't hesitate in reaching out to me. Y'all have my email in the baggies. Awesome. Have a good one. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ingrid. Now I have a series of citizen comment card that all say that they do not wish to speak, so I'll read each of these out, and then the very last one will be Ms. Green, who does wish to speak. So we have Isabel Leal, who does not wish to speak, but records her opposition to the North End Prairie. Victoria Leal, who does not wish to speak and records an opposition to the North End Prairie. Mary Juarez, who does not wish to speak and records opposition to North End Prairie. Linda Ramon does not wish to speak and records opposition to North End Prairie. Orfa Linda Ramon does not wish to speak and records opposition to North End Prairie. Ricky Merino does not wish to speak and records opposition to North End Prairie. Bill Hansen does not wish to speak and records opposition to North End Prairie. Pamela Hardin does not wish to speak and records opposition to North End Prairie. Chelsea Moore does not wish to speak and records opposition to North End Prairie. Nick and Rosie Pacheco does not wish to speak and records opposition to North End Prairie. And last, we have Heather Green, who does wish to speak on North End Prairie.
I'm short, sorry. Good evening. Oh, Heather Green, 2007 Pecan Street. Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and council members and city manager. I want to start by acknowledging that the City Council has been providing more clarity on the North End Prairie development, and for that, we are grateful. However, the developers have not. The lack of transparency from them remains a major concern, and the residents who will be directly impacted still don't have answers they deserve. We need to ensure that this project is done responsibly, not rushed through without considering the serious issues at hand. With those being drainage and flooding, this area has a well-documented flooding history. Without a proper drainage plan, existing homeowners are left vulnerable. We need clear public assurances that flooding risks can be properly studied and addressed, or have been properly studied and addressed. The next is parking and traffic. The current plan does not provide adequate parking solutions. Cramming high-density housing into an established neighborhood without sufficient infrastructure will lead to congestion and safety hazards. What is being done to fix this? And the last is community impact. Just because the code didn't require the developers to notify residents doesn't mean they shouldn't have. Respecting the longtime homeowners in this neighborhood should have been a priority, and open communication should have been given. This development was originally proposed at 62 homes, crammed into just 3.96 acres. That level of density raises serious concerns about livability, infrastructure strain, and long-term sustainability. And yet, when residents raise valid concerns, the response from the developers has been complete disregard. The benefits that will come to all those hardworking families that are going to be able to live here will far outweigh any minor inconvenience that people may face. A minor inconvenience. That's how they view the real and lasting impacts on the people who have called this neighborhood home for decades. That is not how responsible development works. That is not how you respect a community. So we are asking City Council to keep current residents in mind as you move forward. Developers will come and go, but the impact of these decisions will last for decades. It is your responsibility to ensure that growth in Bastrop is responsible, sustainable, and respectful to the people who already call this community home. I also want to remind everyone that the town hall meeting is happening on Monday, March 31st. This is our chance to demand answers directly from the developers. To every concerned resident, please show up, speak up, and make sure your voice is heard. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Green. Okay, so that's the last citizen comment I had, unless someone else did sign up and I missed it somewhere. Okay, so no hands going up. So we're going to move on to the consent agenda. The first item on the consent agenda, 10A, regarding the tree mitigation fees, we're going to pull that for further discussion. There are some changes to it, and I think we should just spend a little bit of time talking about it. So that leaves us the remainder of the items on the consent agenda. Council, do you wish to pull anything else from the consent agenda?
10E and 10F, please.
Okay. So I'll go ahead and read this. There's just the one. So I'm going to read the caption of the remaining ordinance, which is 10B, and then we will also pass with one motion items 10C and 10D, which is a resolution and the meeting minutes. So item 10B, consider and act on second reading ordinance number 2025-30, amending the fiscal year 2024-2025 budget by reducing the hotel occupancy tax HOT reserve amount by $350,000 and increasing the HOT fund operating expenses by $350,000. And thus the remainder of the consent agenda, except for the items we'll pull, which we'll go over one at a time.
Move to approve. Second.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve from Councilperson Fossler, a second from Councilperson Lee. I would have given both to Councilperson Lee, but she chose for me. That's fine. So council, any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Okay, so items 10B, 10C, and 10D have passed unanimously. Let's handle the rest of the items on the consent agenda and then come back to 10A. I think that's going to be a longer discussion. So 10E, consider and act on resolution 2025-71 awarding a $20,000 grant from the Hotel Occupancy Tax Fund to SRE Promotions LLC for an event known as the Corvette Invasion. Ms. Fossler, what did you want to?
Well, Sean Jones drove all the way here, so I wanted to pull it off consent to give a little acknowledgement for such a successful event that you run every year with the Corvette Invasion. So I want to give it some airtime.
Okay, excellent.
He would have been happy to leave. He asked, will you be mad if I leave after the meeting?
But he was still sitting here, so yes, we want to.
Sean, is there anything you'd like to say?
I wasn't prepared for this. But I just, all I can say is we're 4 months from our event. It comes July, so we do need to move forward and then start the promotion. But I've already been, reached out to people all over the country. Now, this is not just, local. This is not a statewide event. These are people that come in from all over the country.
A few from Mexico, too.
Sir?
Mexico, too.
We've had people from Mexico, and we've had people from Canada. But this is the largest Corvette car show in the entire state of Texas. I'm expecting probably 300 to 350 Corvettes to come in, and they'll be spending money, the hotels, restaurants, things like that. So I do feel like it's a great investment for the city, and I would appreciate your support. Thank you.
Councilperson Lee, do you have a question?
Just a statement. I want to thank you also for what you and your group does to bring that event here to Bastrop. I've talked to people between Bastrop, Austin, Pflugerville, and not only do you bring this event to Bastrop, but you also participate in other Corvette clubs. I've met some people that have brought your name up, and I'm like, yeah, I know him. And then we're all shocked. What a small world. But thank you so much for what you do. I look forward to that event. Car shows are one of kind of my things, so I appreciate you guys bringing that to Bastrop. Looking forward to it.
It's our pleasure, and I will say that I hope you're all there because we would love for you to each judge and present that favorite Corvette this year. So hopefully we'll be seeing you in July. Thank you.
Sean, you had an idea last year about using the large shopping cart for a backpack drive.
Yes.
So we should talk about that later.
Yes, we will definitely do that.
Thank you.
So, thank you.
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to approve from Councilperson Plunkett, a second from Councilperson Foster. Any other discussion, council? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion passes unanimously. Move on to item 10F. Consider and act on resolution number R 2025-66, approving a public improvement plan agreement with Longhorn Opportunity Fund for Pecan Park Commercial Block 8, lots 2 to 4 and 6 to 7, as attached in Exhibit A. Councilperson Foster.
I know you've read through this, but I just highlight things that catch my eye. On page 102 of the packet, the public infrastructure construction and acceptance process. Should I give you a second?
Sure, go ahead.
On section A, the very last sentence, the public improvement inspection fees will be 3.5% per the master fee schedule adopted with the ordinance 2019.42. Is that right? Are we doing it a
No.
current one?
There's a let me make sure here, 110, sorry, let me get over to that. Yeah, it's a 1.110, sorry, let me look here. No, there'll be the new fee schedule that's accepted.
That's what I was wanting.
Yeah, it'll be a part of the
It'll
new
be
fee
part of it.
schedule and the fee schedule that's on this. I think this was the draft, because the one in front of me I have has a different fee schedule. 1.1 has the fee schedule broken down that we approved, and then also has the final fees at the end, a different dollar amount of $91,146.
I'm not looking at the amounts. I'm looking at the master's fee schedule. It's referring to a 2019 master fee schedule. Is that correct?
That is not correct.
Okay,
We'll
cool.
update that and make sure it's to the correct one.
Thank you.
Yeah, but based on the change we made last council meeting, I believe it was. Where we had,
Let's see, what else did I catch? Not catch, just wanted to ask about. Page 109 of the packet, the water impact and wastewater, all that's blank, is that right?
yeah, we leave this, so we'd actually been talking to the staff about removing that from. What it was, we used to require them to put that in there, but what that does, that locks them into impact fees now and not at the time of plating. So we leave it blank in the agreement.
Right.
And the new template we're going to use removes the language from it. This is an older one that's
Okay,
coming
awesome.
forward.
And just on the very last page, I need to update the city secretary line, and that's
Yep.
all. Thank you.
Yes.
Those are all my questions.
Okay, a motion, council?
Move to approve.
Second.
Do you object if we state the master fee schedule from last meeting as part of that motion?
To be updated?
I would not object.
Okay.
Tampoco.
Okay. So we have a motion to approve from Councilperson Lee, a second from Councilperson Foster, with a minor adjustment to change the master fee schedule to the one that we approved the last meeting. Any other discussion, council? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Yes. Motion passes unanimously. Okay, now we're going to move back to item 10A. Consider and act on the second reading of ordinance number 2025-28, amending the master fee schedule for tree mitigation fees and amending the Code of Ordinances, Chapter 1, General Provisions, adding Section 11305, Trees on Private Property, amending the Bastrop Building Code B3 Code Section 6304, Protected and Heritage Trees, adding subsection J, Administrative Decision establishing fees and the penalty for violation. So, Mr. Cowie.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, Council. So this is basically brought back from you from our last several meetings. I believe the major things, unless you have a question, was the concern of citizens as it relates to removing trees on a private property. And we've added a section which is in your packet under Exhibit A. Item F, if you'll read down to item F2, on a residential property, the property owner will be required to replant one tree from the plant list of a 2-inch caliper. So basically, the concern was if you had a 24-inch or 10-inch or larger protected tree, charging $400, trying to replace equal caliber. So you have a 20-inch tree that's 20-inch caliber, so planting 10 2-inch trees, we're just requiring to plant one tree to replace that tree. And I didn't know if there's any other specific questions related to the ordinance I can try to answer for you.
Are there any other questions, council? We have a citizen's comment on this, and then we'll need to, discuss amongst ourselves.
So I have a comment on, can I have the clicker, Jim? So I was stopped at lunch today by Ruth Spooner, so hi Ruth, if you're out there listening. I put this in there for a reason because I wanted to clarify the intent. Apparently, I'm glad I do not subscribe to Nextdoor because I don't think I'd get out of bed. We're so bad. So this is clarifying the resident process. So if the tree is 10 inches of caliper, we clarify in our staff report that the statute prevents us from just arbitrarily assessing a resident. There are certain rules that have to be met. If they are a single family and it's their home, and the tree is over certain things, we've still got to give them credit. We still have to go through a process. So what we said at the last council meeting, I want to be very sure everybody understands that. If the tree is 10 inches or greater, call the city. We'll come do it, no charge. There's no charge to the residents. Statute's pretty clear about that. The other part of that is, what if the tree is diseased, et cetera, and I need to chop it down? Do I necessarily have to replace it? Well, I said no charge and no mitigation because I believe that's what the council said, but that's not what has, that's not what's made our way in here. This is still saying they'd have to put in a 2-inch tree. So I want to bring that to the attention of council. What I explained earlier today at lunch is I really am trying to get to a point where we don't have a resident, because again, we're under a form-based code, not a use-based code. We have a resident who clears the property of their trees to then sell it to a commercial development. The opportunity for that to happen has become less and less because we have moved to larger lot sizes and restricted some of the forms in the residential. So if the council wants to amend that, this is your time to do that, to say they don't have to replace with even a 2-inch.
Okay, Councilperson Lee, do you have a question?
Yeah, well, kind of a comment now, because that's what I was going to bring up. I looked, did some research, and no other city charges a fee if it's deceased. There's no mitigation at all. The arborist still has to come out if it's a heritage tree and deem it disease, but there's no other city that does that. They encourage people to replace versus mandatory. So I wanted to bring that up. The other question that I had was regarding the fee, because I know that initially it started out at the $250, and the average cost is $100 to $200 from what I found in Texas. And I know that—
Cost of what?
That planning, what?
You said the average cost is $100 to $200. Cost of what?
$100 to $200 per caliper. versus.
For a tree.
Right. And the initial Parks and Recs recommendation was 250. I know the Planning and Zoning wanted it to make it higher to deter, but I also don't want to, cause undue hardship where we don't need to. If we're higher than Austin and Houston and Dallas, and we're Bastrop, the 400 might be excessive. So I wanted to, and I think Terry's gone, I wanted to get a better understanding of why Parks and Rec initially went with the 250 and then ask you if you think we're doing too much with the 400.
Oh, I can tell you why. The Parks and Rec really wanted 400. They wanted a higher fee. The chairperson said, hey, we don't want to harm developers. We want to make sure that we're still open for business. I want to reiterate, I think $400 is fine because it's really meant to deter folks from just clear cutting. Those are fees and fines when you don't follow the rules. We give you credits for that anyway, so that offset, if you're following the rules, you're going to end up at a net almost zero, hopefully, if you're doing inch per inch. And then hopefully we're working with you to try to save some of those heritage trees and some of those bigger trees that make us, the heart of the Lost Pines, and we're a bird city and a tree city and all those other good stuff. I think $400 is fine. If we find that there are cases who say we don't want to do that and they want to appeal to the Parks Board, they want to appeal to me, I will make sure that you guys know that it has become a deterrent.
Councilperson Foster, do you have a question?
For page 50, all the red lines, all that's new, right? R1.13.05, it's all brand new. But at the top of it, it says trees on private property to provide city legal authority over the care of all trees, plants, shrubs located within privately owned property. Did we ever have that before?
You did not. The ordinance was, because remember, you have a public and a private realm
Right.
now, so we had to refer to the private realm again in this section of the code, number one. And number two, what is still written in the code about the public segment is when trees are overhanging and those kinds of things that we have the ability to come chop them. This section says private because we are going to be coming on to people's private property with their permission, but the code, I wanted to make sure we distinguish between public and private as is currently written in the development code.
Okay, yeah, that's what I'm getting calls about, like, stay off my property.
Well, we won't ever.
Well, not off of it, but don't tell me what to do on my property. But
Yeah.
I think if we take away the replanting requirement, that
Sure,
helps a lot. Yeah.
again, Ms. Spooner gave me an earful at lunch today, all in a good, but it really came from a point of you're restricting my personal
Exactly.
Property rights, and I did say the health of the city in its entirety is everybody's business. I get it, we're sensitive, and I don't want to put us in a point where residents are overburdened with regulation, but at the same time, are we or aren't we a bird in Tree City?
Okay, my other question is the relief for the residential. It says if it's a single family, if it's their home, and if it's disease, does it have to be their home,
Yes.
And
again,
that
that's
is
preventing this commercialization.
So what about people who have rent properties? It's not commercial, but like it
No,
just
that's
like,
still single-family residential.
but it says that it has to be their residence as well.
Let me go back to that.
I just want to make sure that language is not excluding somebody from that.
What number?
Because I think it's meant to be developers and residents, not residents.
Let me go back to that
Investment,
section.
yeah.
Which item is that, Karen?
It's on the slide. It's,
C.
Yep, the fee shall not be assessed, and this is directly from the local government code. If it's located on property that is an existing one-family or two-family dwelling, that is the person's residence. That is straight from the local government code. And is less than 10 inches in diameter. That's straight from the local government code.
I concede.
Councilperson Meyer, do you have a question?
Thank you. So today I spoke with someone who just had to take a diseased pine tree down, big one, because they had also had limbs fall a few years back on structures, which totally get their intent. Also, was told that they will plant a tree. They were very happy about the 2-inch, not having like size, right? 2-inch, no problem. The problem or something that could happen about not replanting that we need to think about is between Mina and Cedar Street years ago, that lot is bald. It's the house next to Susan Long that's in really bad shape. There are no trees left on that property at all because they came in and they scalped that property. So I totally understand property rights. I have a business, so I really understand overreach. I don't want us to have any overreach, but I also want to prevent anything like that from happening. So I just want us to think about replacement, consider that. I'm good with what the people want, honestly. I don't want to cause any big issues with the tree thing and thinking we're trying to overreach, but I do want us to consider when you take something down, being a bird city and we're trying to, with flooding and drought and everything, we really kind of need to try to think about as much green as we can get to. So let's just think about that when we contemplate this.
So we have a citizen comment from Herb Goldsmith on this item. Would you like to come and address us, please?
Councilmember Fossler, that is section 212.905.
Hello. Herb Goldsmith, 1105 Pecan Street. I still have a headache from looking at this. I looked at it very thoroughly. I watched the meeting on the 11th. Thank you for the big pecan illustration you gave, because I live on 0.13 acres. I had 6 pecans over me. I have removed one with my neighbor, and the other ones I spend thousands every 2 years to trim them back because pecans are self-pruning. They're dangerous. I had one wipe out half the back porch years ago. So, what's related to that? I went to the B3 technical manual. It said, there's our preferred plants, whatever you want to call it. I looked at it, and then it was like preferred plant list, canopy, accent, because it hasn't been modified from whatever you guys did a month ago. So then I thought, well, this says canopy. Is that what they're talking about? Then I looked at the change you made in the ordinance, and it went from 21 to 36 trees. Now, I, as a concerned citizen, took the initiative to look at the technical code as advised per the B3 code and had bad information. It was only after I went and dug further and further, realized, oh my gosh, we've got this new thing with 36 trees on it, which in a way is confusing because you call it a plant list, and you have native trees, invasive trees, non-native plants, invasive landscaping. I mean, what is the protected trees? The native trees? Should be labeled like that so people understand. I can't read this attachment without, do you also include acceptable non-native plants? Things of that sort. As a citizen, you guys read this stuff. You have planners and lawyers and everything else. We have to delve into things and say, wow, this just doesn't feel right. This is fishy to me. The other part was, what is the, going from $150 to $400? I mean, that seems like overreach to me. For private, do what you want to with developers. Austin has an ordinance for developers. You go on it, it tells you exactly what they have to do. There, any tree over 8 inch has to be surveyed at the development. So they are provided with a survey of every tree that will be affected. Then their arborist goes out and goes, this one, not yet, you're fine. Completely different from what we're doing right now. We're just going gung-ho. And then Austin has for individual residences, very clear, part 1, is your tree a protected tree? Well, what they do is very simple. If it's 19 inches or above, it's a protected tree. Anything below that is not protected. You have the right to do whatever you want. You want to put up a shed, it's 16 inches, go ahead. So, I did have a question about, thank you for catching the math error, going from 9 trees for your poor neighbor down to at least 2 inches. And thank you for striking that, because I do think that's intrusive. On my .13, do I really need to plant another tree? Maybe a shrub, maybe something. I shouldn't have to plant another tree. I don't have any room. And we do plant preferred small trees right now because of the hazards we experience at this very moment with trees falling and with pecans. So when I went from the B3 technical, there was no pecans, I was like, oh, this is great. Just great. I'm saved. And then I went to the, finally dug down and went, oh, no, I'm not.
And then we added it. Yeah.
Oh, I'm not. I'm still dealing with the pecan tree. So the reason I'm so glad that a citizen can pull something off the consent agenda. I don't know of anybody else that was looking at this. I'm also, unfortunately, we used to have a community paper where you could write an opinion. You could be op-ed. You could be many things, but you could get it out there within a week. We don't have that. So people use Nextdoor. I don't believe in Facebook, that's for sure. But Nextdoor is a good place to get information. Like it or not, that's what it's there for. And that's where things are getting pumped out to the people in the historical area and the surrounding people that will be affected. And thank you for the longer than 3 minutes. I hope you really take a hard look at this and look at it from the perspective of, I'm just the guy. Oh, and another thing I'm going to say is, my neighbors, we all use the same tree person. He has a consultant arborist. If he thinks there's an arborist need, he calls him. He went up to the one pecan that we took down, which cost well over $3,000. Now, who wants to remove a tree unless they have to? This cost over $3,000. What he did, he went up and he saw where the limb had broken off, and he took his arm and went in there and put it down. There was no meat. There was no tree. It was just the outer rings. And he said, no, Herb, this has got to go. So we did it. I just want to be given credit for being a good citizen. I don't want to feel like I'm being overmanaged and overordinanced and overrepresented for whatever reason. Thank you for letting me speak. Thank you for pulling it off the agenda. And I hope people out there realize you need to look at what's going on at your city. I watch the program. It's my favorite serial.
Thank you, Herb.
Episode 34. But thank you so much, and thank you for your warm welcome today.
Thank you. Okay, Council. So we've had a presentation. Even lots of comments and observations on what we have written down and kind of what we want to do. But at this point in our rules of procedure, we're supposed to take a motion. So let's put a motion on the table, and then we can talk about it. If we decide to change that, we can change it.
Motion to approve.
Okay. I have a motion to approve from Councilperson Meyer.
I'll second, assuming that we're going to change it.
Okay. So we have a second from Councilperson Plunkett. And, I kind of have some notes and thoughts on this. It's not questions for staff, but it's, just kind of things for the public. It's things, The basic goal here is to preserve the beauty of our city. And so we know that our residents want to maintain as many of the old growth, larger, non-invasive tree species that have been identified through a fairly lengthy public input process to come up with that list of trees, the kind of the native ones. So we're trying to do that. We also had a substantial public reaction when an entire 75 acres worth of trees were cut down near 969. It was loud, and we heard it, and so we started looking at what we could do to prevent that might be a word, but in reality, it's more likely to provide enough disincentives so that people won't do that in the future, that they will do it through a discussion with a tree survey and have the conversation with our Development Review Committee on which specific select trees they need to take down instead of just clear cutting the whole thing all at once. In town, existing homeowners, you know, we have 100-plus-year-old trees on people's yards in downtown, and they're big and they're beautiful, but sometimes the insides of them get hollowed out, and you don't see that from the street. You still see a big, beautiful tree there, but it's sick, and every tree will die, you know, and so we have to make allowances for that. I really like some of the clarifications the city manager made that are, you know, still up on the slide that's visible here. Just saying that there's no charge, no mitigation required for the diseased trees and such. I do personally like the idea of having the homeowner install a 2-inch tree in its place. I mean, maybe not directly in its place, but somewhere else on the property. You know, it allows for that opportunity for 100 years from now that 2-inch tree turns back into a big grand tree as big as the one that was taken down. And you know, whenever you look out kind of along the roof line and the horizon of town, you see a lot of those huge trees. And so, and they will die. So the opportunity to replace them on the cycle with which they die and put new ones in their place, I kind of like that. It seems like a reasonable thing to do. Now, Mr. Goldsmith, there might be times where you've got 0.17 acres and you got 7 of those trees and you don't even have sunlight. So maybe it doesn't make sense in your case. And so there's going to be the relief outlet of the city manager being able to make an exception. And I'm just trying to, I don't know, find the right path. You know, so it's
Mayor Pro Tem, if I may.
Yeah.
I want to remind that this didn't happen in a vacuum. We
Absolutely
had the
not.
outcry of the development at 969 and 71. The tree board, which is the Park and Recreation Board, met and discussed at length, many meetings. We had arborists from City of Austin who live in Bastrop come visit with the Parks Director, visit with me on what those trees and what that process should look like. Whether trees should be on or not, that list was exhaustive. If anybody goes and watches the Planning Commission meeting or any Parks Board meeting, you'll know we've had more than 5 meetings just discussing those trees. And believe it or not, there were arguments on the floor as to whether or not something's invasive or ugly. And, you know, I can't judge ugly because ugly is in the eye of the beholder. I can judge invasive, but it didn't happen in a vacuum, and it has been ongoing, and it has been months in the making. And so at the point that we are today, I just want to remind everybody, the thing that is in front of the council is mostly for commercial development. We put residential in it because we don't have any zoning. It's form. So what is a residential use may get caught up in or a residential building form may get caught up in a commercial use. We're still restricted by the local government code. We're not trying to, you know, at one point in time, this was replaced like for like, 14 trees, 14 trees. It is nowhere near that. We had public comment at the convention center also about this is craziness, please don't have us do that. We do have an arborist. We engaged arborists. We have arborists who live among us who will help us do this work. And there are relief valves built in.
And so in terms of the 10-inch tree, our current tree protection is 13 inches, is that right?
Correct. Yes, and that was again at the request of the park board.
No, it's
And 10 is
10
the.
in this one, I'm saying the one that's in the ordinances today is 13. Council, I mean, that's another lever that we have. I wouldn't object to going back to 13 if we were wanting to have it impact fewer trees or fewer people or not. But, you know, that's where the lever is set today in our current past code, B3 code. So that's another thing that we could discuss. And, yeah.
That was also a discussion at the Parks Board. I mean, it's been mighty discussion, whether it's
Right.
4.5 feet off the ground, whether it's 5 feet off the ground, 2 feet off the ground, et cetera.
Now,
et
I
cetera.
will point out, you just said 4.5 feet. There is almost a discrepancy in C versus B. So in B, in effect, if you are a commercial developer, then you get to measure at 5 feet off the ground. But if you're residential, you have to measure at 4.5 feet off the ground in item C, which makes it bigger, which makes it worse.
Correct, should
Yeah.
be 4.5 feet total. 'cause-
Both of them?
4.5. That's the code, that's the local government code.
So B should be 4.5 feet as well.
And that's the most restrictive. And you're right, council has the ability to say, we don't want 10, maybe we want 11, maybe
Oh,
we
your
want
B is
12.
different than my B. Yeah, your B up here says 4.5, the one in our packet says 5, so that's where the difference is.
4.5.
Yeah, it got fixed, okay. Okay, so council, those are my thoughts. Let's keep talking, who else?
May I just ask, since I am the liaison for the Parks Board and Terry is here, and going on exactly what you just brought up, could I ask Terry to come up? And Terry, please inform us, since we were at all of the meetings, please let everyone know listening now, this was not taken lightly at all, and many, many hours. have
No, there
gone-
was a lot of conversation about it. I mean, there was the amount, the dollar amount was discussed at length. There was conversation about residential and the difference between residential and commercial, and if we put it at 400, how does that affect the developers and all of those kinds of things, those conversations. I do want to also mention that we actually have been going out. Our arborist is actually responding to calls because of all this conversation. And if a tree is diseased, he'll tell you. If a limb is falling off and will damage a piece of property, it is not our goal to have trees in your yard that will have limbs fall through your roof. I mean, there have been conversations about that. That tree needs to come down because the limbs are falling or it's hollow inside. That's a common conversation with pecans. So, I mean, it has at length been, we've had lots of conversations. And I will tell you, I'm encouraged by the conversations. We're moving in the right direction.
Councilperson Lee, you had discussion points.
Thank you. So I'm okay with the 13, if that's what council so chooses. The 1-for-1, having to replace 1-for-1, it's just not the standard. The only one city that I found that did it was in specific zoning areas, specified zoning areas had to replace. And then I think
When you
we
say
also need-
1-for-1, you mean replace a tree for a
Replacing
tree
the- yeah.
versus inches for inches?
Right,
It's tree for tree, okay, got it, go ahead.
And then I just think about residents and the hardships, financial hardships of, not just purchasing a new tree, but going to find. I wouldn't know, if I'm getting a heritage tree or not. It's just putting an extra hardship on the residents. If one is diseased and has to be removed or has to be cut down. Now, it's clarify for me, if it's diseased and it has to be cut down, there's no what we're proposing is no mitigation, no fee. But if I'm building my she shed and that heritage tree is in the way, is there then mitigation? Okay, so that needs to be clarified.
Conversation, I'll
Yes.
give you an example. So I have, this is hypothetical, but I have a neighbor, and there is a giant tree out there, and for whatever reason, he decides he just doesn't want the tree anymore, whether it's because a limb fell off or because he doesn't like the shade there, he wants to plant something that's sunny or whatever. It happens. People just cut trees down for no reason. If it's a protected tree, then we want it back. If it's a China berry, not so much, So, I mean, that's where some of the conversation comes in on what is good and what is bad. We're just trying to protect the heritage trees. I will tell you, even our parks, I think somebody mentioned that earlier in one of the earlier discussions, and we are replacing trees. Trees mature. They just do. So the trees that we are taking down, we are replacing.
And Wasn't the recommendation to reduce the 400 to 250 for residential owners for removal of heritage trees per caliper?
There was a conversation about that, yes.
Conversation, I thought that was what we landed on, 250 per caliper, not 400 for residents.
Well, when we went to residents, we said 1 for 1, right?
Oh, so we took it off, we took the money amount off of residents
Isn't that
altogether,
correct?
1 for 1. So we're still at, now we're at 1 for 1 if it's a heritage, 0 to 0 if it's diseased. Is that where we are now?
No, so the proposal up on the screen is even if it's a heritage tree, if it is diseased, if it is in the way, so long as they go through the appropriate process, then they only have to replace 2 inches. They only have to replace 2 inches. And I think that's where some of the confusion is. I would love for you to replace that giant oak that you took out, but Cheryl wants to build her she shed and she took out the oak. She can put a 2-inch oak somewhere else on the property.
So I want to make sure I'm clear on what I'm voting on. So if it's just a trash tree, I don't have to replace
Not
that.
on the list. Nobody
Not on
cares.
the list, right? If it's diseased, and the arborist confirms it's diseased, didn't you recommend no mitigation, no fees? You don't have to replace it. Or are you still saying we have to replace it?
So right now, the way the ordinance reads is you must replace it with a 2-inch tree. My recommendation to the council is if you guys want to go there, you can take out that 2-inch recommendation. You do not have to go 1 for 1. That was removed at y'all's last council meeting.
Yeah, that was a proposal that I had made last time
Yes.
to deal with the huge pecan tree
Yes.
and not wanting to force someone to put 18
And
trees in
it
the
was
ground.
Robbie Sanders. It was the
Right.
example for Robbie Sanders. And so part of that, again, part of the conversation today is our intent is not to be overburdensome and not have a rule just for the sake of rules, right? If people are going to cut down a tree on the weekend, trust me, the neighbors are going to call. We're not out looking for people chopping down trees. Those neighbors call us every Monday. I wish it could be poor Robert McBain on a Monday morning for all the code stuff that gets called in over the weekends. But, again, we talk about what's unique about Bastrop, what makes Bastrop so special. It's our trees, it's our open space, it's our clean water.
So our options are no fee at all, no mitigation replacement, or 1 for 1
No, there's no 1 for 1 on the table for residents anymore.
at all.
No, what's on the table for residents is replaced with a 2-inch caliper tree from the list.
Okay, got it. 2-inch caliber. And then possibly designating a heritage at 13 inches instead of 10.
That's Mayor Pro Tem's suggestion.
Yes. Thanks.
I would really hate for us to do that because of all of the input that we had before, but council can do what council wants to do.
You're done now? Councilperson Plunkett.
Yeah, I like the direction that the conversation is going in general. But I would like to add to that what Mr. Goldsmith said. I completely agree with the disconnect between what the code says is in terms of protected trees versus the plant list. Doesn't say protected trees. It says heritage trees and trash trees. It doesn't say trash trees. It says invasive. And so if we could just make the language, the chart, first of all, could easily say, you can still call them heritage trees and just put protected or, shade it as protected, or just to make it more clear for the average reader. Because I know I look at it and I'm like, are we doing this? I think that's included there, but not here. And if I'm doing it, then, and I'm a lot more involved, if somebody's just trying to figure out whether they can cut a tree down or not, they're not going to have that time to, and the resources to go back to the different part of the code where it says where I'd just like to clean that up.
Can we go to B? Can you go back to the text and then look at B? It says, person seeking to remove a tree on the protected tree list. So at least that's referring to the existence of something.
Right, and there is a list that says protected trees. The list says invasive trees, heritage trees.
Right. So,
Or plants.
and
They
it
don't even
could
call
be
them trees.
that you do something along the lines of call that list the protected tree list, or call this the one that's on this
Right.
page, whatever that list is already called, but also refer to where it's located.
Right.
Like in the technical manual or in the,
Right, and that
you
should be
know,
a hyperlink that says, here's your list of trees, the current list of trees, not, the one that was passed in 2019 or whenever, but, let's keep it current and,
I'll just remind the council, we codify
Right.
probably every quarter or every 6 months. We don't codify as these things go along. It gets inordinately expensive. The B3 code should have a more frequent update, but the B3 code is independent of the Code of Ordinances, and I've told you that we are now going to incorporate it as we get to a more unified development code and not 3 different books, that it'll be incorporated into the Code of Ordinances where it is easily referenced.
okay. So, no idea how to put that into a motion, but.
okay, well, we're in the discussion phase right now. So, Councilperson Meyer.
Thank you. I'm trying to remember what it was that I was going to say before we got on that, because I started thinking about that. But, so B should say, because I do have on B 5 feet, so we should make sure that it says exactly what that is, 4.5 feet. The other discussion, I just want to, because we're talking about a lot of things here, so we want to say, or there's an option to possibly not require even a 2-inch tree to be planted, right? That's something else.
Process already in there. The city manager has discretion. So if I come upon a lot that really, number one, doesn't have any room, and or putting the tree back in the place where the tree was is not going to be good, then.
Right. So that process is there. So we have relief of that. The other discussion item, I think that we're shoving back and forth or thinking about is 10-inch to 13-inch, right?
Correct.
So there's a reason the parks and tree went to 10-inch. And I've been through so much discussion with them, so I am inclined to stay with the 10-inch as recommended.
Okay, so all the lights are off. Do you remember who made the original motion?
I made the motion.
Okay. That's right.
So could I recommend maybe, because there's quite a bit of cleanup, and I don't think there's nothing critical for doing it tonight, is there? Can we push it off until next meeting and, try to clean up the charts and the language and all that stuff, or do you really need it done tonight?
Nope.
So we also saw here on item 2 near the bottom, so 3 lines up from the very bottom, on residential property, the property owner will be required to replant 1 tree from the plant list of a 2-inch caliber, so the word plant list. So that's what Mr. Goldsmith was referring to, where it's called different things in different places, but it's actually referring to the same list.
Right, and the invasive trees are on the plant list. So.
They're struck out.
Well, but if.
No, red header is what we did. We did green for natives and red header for invasives.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, it
anyway,
seems like we could
just-
clean up
yeah.
that sort of stuff where, well, it's on the invasive plant, it's on the plant list because it's listed as an invasive species. And it says right here, I just got to pick something from the list.
And invasive species make a lot of honey for the bees. Yeah. Well, council, we have a motion on the floor, a possible suggestion to table. Does anyone want to alter a motion?
I can alter my motion to approve, from motion to approve to motion to table,
To a date certain, please.
to our next city council meeting in April, the first one, yes.
Okay. So it probably requires an.
I would agree with that alteration.
Okay, so we now have a motion and a second that has been amended to table this item until the next regular council meeting and make some of the changes in our discussion. Councilperson Foster.
Is it possible to do like a workflow for developers and workflow for residents, so residents don't have to even look through the developer portion, almost separate them? Is that possible? Is that too much
Sure.
work? Okay.
I'll bring the workflow from the B3,
You know,
see if we can figure it out.
The challenge is that they can be the same thing at times, the whole form-based code thing.
We'll do our best to simplify it for.
Yeah, I mean, simplify is really good.
Yes. I don't want residents to have to just read through all the development part if it's not going to apply.
You know, there's for instance, residents that may live on, 50 acres in town with one house. And so it's not strictly the unified definition all by itself.
Yeah, and I'm not a big fan of making rules for one group of people that are different for another group of people, so.
But anyway. Okay, so we have a motion on the table, which is to table this item to the next regular council meeting. We've had a fair amount of healthy discussion. Thank you all for that. I think we might be ready to vote. Okay, so this is a motion to table. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Okay, the motion to table passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Goldsmith, for your input as well on that. That was item 10A on the consent agenda. We've now completed the entire consent agenda. Now moving on to items for individual consideration. 11A was a swearing in of our judge that we witnessed earlier, so we're now on to 11B. Conduct a public hearing, consider and act on the first reading of ordinance number 2025-34 for a zoning concept scheme request to rezone the project site from P5 Core to Planned Development District, PDD, with a base district of P5 Core for the area described as being 43.112 plus or minus acres out of the Nancy Blakey Survey, Abstract 98, located at 540 West State Highway 71, Bastrop, Texas, 78602 within the city limits of Bastrop, Texas, and move to include on the April 8th, 2025 consent agenda for the second reading. You're not Mr. Cowie.
I'm not, but I am presenting this one.
Excellent.
Mayor Pro Tem Council, bring to you the Nixon PDD. We've had lots of discussions with planning and zoning the last meeting, and so start off with an overview where we're talking about tonight. So the yellow, Colin, is this, will it do its thing tonight? Maybe. We're talking about the yellow here. As you can see, here is 304. This is Hunter's Crossing. This is Bastrop Grove. This is the Nixon track. And then this is what we call Pecan Park Commercial. South side's like right here on this corner. And then that's 71. So we're going to be talking about this yellow triangle here. This is the current zoning for the Nixon track. It's currently zoned P5. That's here in this center here. As you can see, there's P5 to the west, a PDD for the Grove, a PDD for Pecan Park Commercial, PDD down here, and then additional P5. So everything in purple is the P5 that's already zoned currently. Planning and zoning made a recommendation. They motioned to approve this. It was a 7-1. They passed it off to you guys, and the only thing they wanted to add was a traffic impact analysis. They made a friendly amendment to you guys to recommend that they do this, and I'll talk about that here in a minute. So let's talk about what is currently allowed today. So currently it's zone P5. That means they're vested to the previous, because of their submittal for when they submitted their document to us, they were vested to the previous tree requirements. As we just had lots of discussions about, pecan tree is not a protected heritage tree that's in the previous tree requirements. They're also vested to the previous civic space requirement for B3 version of the parkland, and they have 5 stories by right. So the reason I bring these up is we're going to talk through these for this track. Part of the P&Z discussion, we had lots of discussion about what's worst case scenario. So let's talk about worst case. So to allow today, so here's their north and their south. So just for iteration, you got Agnes Street that kind of goes through the middle. That's the north side, and then the south side. And so when we say north is 14.8 acres. Because they're allowed 5 stories, they can get 700 units max at an 80% impervious cover and 570 units at 65% impervious cover. in that north track. So on the south track, it's 25 acres, and if with 5 stories, they can get 1,200 units max at 80%, and then get 960 units at 65%. So their potential with today's zoning is a total of 1,900 max units at P5 at 80%, and then a total of 1,530 max units at P5, 65%. So 1,530 units on this track can go allowed today, okay? So the reason I bring that up is this is their concept plan. As you note in the top boxes here, we're gonna talk about these more in depth as we go through this PowerPoint. Also, developers gonna come up, they're gonna give their PowerPoint, and we'll walk through it again, but they're proposing for the north side, 370 units, and for the south side, they're proposing 200 units for a total of 570 units up here on the top, as you can see. So that's their request for the PDD, so they are going way below what they're allowed to do. That was a lot of discussion with P&Z is what is the worst case and what can they do? Also, a part of the concept plan, they provided parkland. There is 3.83 or 85 acres of parkland, so everything here in the green is parkland. There's a very small sliver here of the electrical easement that's going to be part of the parkland, but the majority of the parkland is in this green area. And this is a concept, so this could change a little bit here and there. When they come up, they'll talk about that. But for the most part, their PDD requirement talks about at the time of dedication, their improvements, they have to, instead of paying a fee in lieu of, their improvements could be not limited to sports courts, playgrounds, picnic areas, park furniture, utility connections. So they're going to pay in, they're not only going to donate to us, they're going to pay in and construct some vertical improvements into the park that they're dedicating to us. Again, it's not a requirement at this point, but it is a moving forward and something they put into their PDD language. Anything else on that one? I'm talking to my parkland guru. So here's our PDD built environment. We have a lot of PDDs already existing in this environment. As you can see, this is Hunter's Crossing. They're a planned development district that covered the entire area here. The Grove is a planned development district. Pecan Park Commercial is a planned development district. And Pecan Park, the residential, is a planned development district. And so adding another planned development district is pretty common for this area here. So talk about trees. So this was an existing, previously pecan orchard. It was back all the way back to when Birdall Pecans owned the corner lot there at 304. It has been a significant time period for when this was an actual orchard. And so we did have a arborist go out and do a survey of the trees. They had 1,271 pecan trees on the total 43 acres. 936 of those trees were dead or they're in severe decline. 335 of the trees are in varying states of vigor or decline, and this is just from not being kept up. Pecan trees are very, as we've heard discussions, they're maintenance nightmares, and they require a lot of water and a lot of upkeep. Hasn't been a lot of watering. The well has been turned off for a significant amount of time, and it's just been left out for Mother Nature to take its course. And so what we negotiated, and again, we're talking about no requirements right now, right? Most of these trees are not over the 10 or the 13 inches that are in our current code. Most of them are below that because it's a smaller tree, smaller orchard. And so there's no mitigation, probably no mitigation required through this process. We have to dive into that survey really deep. But we did negotiate with them and say, well, show us some good faith effort. And what they came forward with is a mitigation cost of 50% of the mitigation, $600 per 4-inch tree. And so they're going to take the good trees, the 335 trees. We're going to split the cost by $300, and they're going to pay a mitigation fee of $100,000 and $500. That mitigation fee will probably be used back towards planting the trees in the new PDD development, as well as, so if they don't plant $100,000 worth of trees, then we will receive some of that tree fund back. So this will go in an escrow and kind of sit there. Let's talk about drainage. So drainage, part of their design drainage pond will be equivalent to a 50% impervious cover. In their PDD, they're asking for 70%, but they're going to do a design that will calculate up to 50%. So they may go deeper in their pond or wider in their pond. It just depends on how they engineered that. But basically, they're going to over-design and over-engineer their drainage. Any questions? I see you're going to wait and ask the developer.
I have one just real quick, because I know people will ask when they see the trees going down.
Yes.
We're very sensitive about trees. On the trees that are left, there is no way to salvage or give the trees away?
Great question. Yeah, we had tons of discussion about that with the developer and the owner, the current owner,
And the arborist.
And the arborist, about can we relocate the trees? And part of the discussion is, well, maybe we offer the trees up for citizens to pay for the removal and they relocate the trees, or the city take and put them in parks. The arborist said no, that the relocation of those trees, because of their decline, they would not survive the relocation, so you would waste money on the relocation. And so it's better that they either stay or they go and not be relocated. And so that's why we chose the mitigation cost instead. Good question. Any other questions? So here in a second, I'm going to turn it over to Sarah with the group here, and we'll let her give her speech. Anything else for me? If not, I'm going to come back at the end and we'll pick it up. Thank you. I'd like to introduce Sarah.
Good evening, council members. My name is Sara Bosa. I'm a planner with Ferris Design, and I will be presenting on behalf of the Nixon PDD project team tonight. I'm going to move quickly because I know it's late, and I'm sure you guys have a lot of questions, so I'm just going to go as quickly as I can. All right. As Andres was saying, the Nixon PDD tract is about 43.1 acres. It's within the city limits. We're right on State Highway 71 with Agnes Street and Orchard Parkway on either side. We're next door to Ascension Seton and the Pecan Park Commercial PDD. The city's future land use plan calls for general commercial, transitional residential, and neighborhood residential on our site. So that kind of entails, office space, general retail, single family, townhomes, and multifamily, kind of going high density to low density as you move south down the parcel. Current zoning and the intended base zoning for the site is P5 core, which calls for a high density mix of commercial, office space, row houses, and apartments. What isn't included is single-family forms, and that's what we're looking to. That's one of the uses we're looking to include in the site. And so, really, we're rezoning. We're asking for a PDD overlay, but in a certain way, we're also kind of downzoning, so allowing for a little less density and some single-family uses. The schematic framework plan included with our submitted PDD application here just illustrates the kind of uses we're looking for to include on the site. So you see commercial along State Highway 71, optional commercial along the public right-of-way frontages, which include Agnes Street and Orchard Parkway, as well as garden apartment multifamily use in the center of the site, and then single-family uses such as townhomes or clustered housing in the rear portion of the site. I want to include here that the developer has agreed to construct the southern portion of Orchard Parkway extension. That's between Agnes Street and our rear property line. The Pecan Park Commercial PDD folks just east of us have agreed to build the northern part of Orchard Parkway expansion. The schematic master plan, also included in the PDD application submittal, just gives a little more detail to just one of the layouts that we are considering for the site. And so you see the lighter yellow boxes would contain a clustered single-family use, and so each condo area could have 4 to 5 single-family homes, let's say. And the darker yellow are row houses. Like Andres covered, the city requires a minimum of 3 contiguous acres of open space for parkland dedication. If we build to our maximum 570 dwelling units, we would be on the hook for 3.85 acres. This is one potential layout where we would dedicate about 3.88 acres of green open space to the city. And I just want to remind the council that detention ponds would be maintained and owned by the developer and would not be included in that parkland dedication. And just to give a little bit more detail as to lot layout, we're planning for 4 lots on this site. And so 2 lots, 2 commercial lots along the highway frontage, 1 lot encompassing the entire garden apartment, and then a horizontal condo regime for the southern portion. And so all the single-family homes would be on 1 lot. So a resident could rent or own a structure, but the land itself would be owned and maintained by the developer and/or the HOA. And of course, the parkland to be dedicated to the city would be platted as a separate lot. On our site, we have 3 different types of private access easement drives, and here's just some sections to give you a little bit of detail of how those could be designed. And then some pretty pictures of precedent images of what we're planning to, just to give you a better idea of the vision for the garden apartments, row houses, and the single-family homes. And with that, I will open the floor to questions.
So you said, or he said, that you're going to over-engineer the drainage so that it's the equivalent of a 50% impervious cover. What's the engineering process for that?
I can't speak to the engineering process.
And
I'm just a land
can you please show
planner.
me your work? Yeah, I want to, yeah.
All the planning, what I can say about the detention ponds and planning is that will come as we move forward with the process. And so as we hone in and bake our land plan, our master plan, that's when we'll get into the fine details of exact locations and sizing of the detention ponds.
Andres, can you, high-level description of how one might go about that in normal words? Obviously it's oversized, but
it's oversized.
How do you calculate what oversized should be?
It's a reverse engineering. How much concrete is on the ground, and you get to 50%, and then you figure out how deep the hole, how wide the hole, and how big the pumps need to be.
Yeah. It's the same thing we did for
my city engineer is in the back looking very casual. I'm sure that Mr. Tiger Davis would
Is he running off now?
love to come up and have a conversation.
Yeah, same thing we did with FM 969 retail. We were the same for them.
Mr. Davis,
you want to explain
please.
how you engineer?
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. My name is Tiger Davis. I am your new Director of Engineering and Capital Projects.
Well, howdy.
Wanted to say the title for my own job. Real easy calculation. We look at impervious cover. It can't soak into the ground.
Right.
It creates so much water based on rain events that we choose, and it comes up with a volume. First, we make sure it can convey to the pond, adequately not drain into anybody's property. And then we collect that volume in, hopefully, a regional fashion.
And do you calculate that volume in like acre feet or?
Actually, no, CFS, cubic feet.
Okay.
And then the outflow is cubic feet per second.
Okay, got it. Okay, that'll work for me, thanks.
Pretty straightforward. I'll bring an example next time.
Sure.
Any other questions?
Councilperson Meyer.
Thanks. So considering under the B3 codes, what could be there, again, we have an example of extremely high density that could be there, which is super scary. So I really appreciate y'all working to something that's much better solution. My concern is probably going to be exactly what P&Z was with the amount of traffic. So I do understand why a TIA would be required. But I just really, going from what could be there to what now is proposed is 1,000,000% better than what we could have there because of the B3 codes.
Did we address parking?
We haven't here, but
Yes.
we can.
So at the P and Z, they were also made aware they'll be meeting the new parking standard.
And you went. Awesome. Right?
Yeah, and the discussion was they would flush that out during the site plan and going through that process.
That's even better.
Councilperson Foster?
Thank you. First of all, thanks to P&Z. I tuned into that meeting. That was a very robust discussion for going through the details. So they put you through the ringer so we don't have to. But I do want to talk about the cross streets, the one that had the 3 different kinds of streets. It looks like 10 foot from Orchard Parkway. Is that the build-to line for the exterior streets for Orchard Parkway? I know there's just, where my question is coming from is like the apartments at Alta Trails and how the proximity to the street is at like 5 feet, and I think these are 10. I just want to get a gauge for what we can expect. They're 10, right?
Which one's set?
For Orchard Parkway.
That's on the chart.
Sorry.
Yeah, these are
All of them are
Yes.
internal? Okay, so
I see your
I
question.
wonder how close the closest building will be to Orchard. Do you know that? Is that ish yet?
If I'm not mistaken, sorry. It's kind of the back lot, right? That's the back.
Right. Those are rear loaded. So it'd be kind of industry standard for a front yard setback. So about 15 to 20 feet.
15 is your rear, your rear yard setback is 15 feet and your front setback is 10 foot.
Okay. So 15, okay, got it. And what is Alta right now? What is Alta Trails from the?
5.
It's 5, okay, so visually it'll look more spacious and safer.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
And no trees in the public realm.
Yes.
That's great.
Okay, so all the lights are off up here. We have a public hearing attached to this item, so I'm going to open the public hearing. Madam Assistant City Secretary, do we have anyone signed up to speak in the public hearing? Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing. Council, we've asked questions. We've had a very, very brief public hearing. It's very quiet. And might there be a motion on the
Move to
table?
approve.
Second.
Yeah. The TIA is not, I don't believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but is the TIA in
No.
that?
So if you look at our recommendation here, I moved to this slide. Our recommendation would be to make sure that y'all add the verbiage if
Correct.
you wish TIA be a part of
Could
it.
you amend your motion to include that? Would you mind, Councilmember Plunkett?
Yes, does the developer have any objection to that?
I'm not the developer, but I do represent the developer, a landowner specifically. We have no objection to that. We just ask for it be provided at the time of site plan, because at plating, we still won't have a firm grasp on the uses. So it'd be most effective at site plan. Thank you.
P&Z recommended at plating. It's up to y'all to decide which way. It's just in our development process. It's usually better for it to be before plating, just so that we make sure we get the appropriate right-of-way or anything else that may be any improvements that may need to be made. But
What do you recommend?
At or before plat, I mean, we can always discuss.
Don't give us
highest-
choices.
I'm sorry?
What do you recommend? Don't give us a choice.
I'm telling you,
We said at or before.
That's a choice.
That's a choice.
before. They can always select highest and best uses based on the charts allowed in the PID.
Okay, so
or
you said
PDD,
before, what again?
Plat.
Before plating.
Which is what was the planning commission's
Yes.
recommendation also. Sorry, I know it's going to make your job a little bit harder and we'll end up with 3 tables, but.
Okay, I'd request to amend my motion to ask for a TIA before plating.
I accept.
Okay, we have a motion on the table from Councilperson Plunkett, a second from Councilperson Lee. Apparently, I didn't quite know that, so cool, thank you. And any other discussion? Okay, well then, let's take a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion passes unanimously. Item 11C. It's broken up into A and B. So item A, conduct a public hearing and consideration of ordinance 2025-38 levying special assessments for and apportioning the costs of certain improvements to property and for the Valverde Public Improvement District Area Number 1, fixing a charge and lien against all properties within the district and the owners thereof, providing for the manner and method of collection of such assessments, making a finding of special benefit to property in the district and the real and true owners thereof, approving a service and assessment plan, providing a severability clause, and providing an effective date.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. This is the final hurdle for the Valverde development that's been in the cooker for some time. We did put the bonds, we in conjunction, all put the bonds out on the street. The bonds sold very quickly. The initial sale was 11.9. It came in at 12.3, so there's a minor adjustment. We also were able to incorporate legal fees, which amounted to a little bit under $30,000 into the overall cost. And it's required by law. It's been noticed for today, and public hearing is required.
Any questions, council? Open the public hearing. Madam Assistant City Secretary. Okay, we are crickets again. I'm going to close the public hearing.
Move to approve.
Second.
A motion to approve from Councilperson Lee, a second from Councilperson Plunkett. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Okay, motion passes unanimously. 11CA. So 11CB. Consideration of ordinance 2025-39 authorizing the issuance of the City of Bastrop, Texas Special Assessment Revenue Bond Series 2025 Valverde Public Improvement District Improvement Area Number 1 project. Approving and authorizing an indenture of trust, a bond purchase agreement, an offering memorandum, a continuing disclosure agreement, and other agreements and documents in connection therewith, making findings with respect to the issuance of such bonds and providing an effective date.
This just means they will be first lien. City will be first lien.
Any questions, council?
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion to approve from Councilperson Plunkett, a second from Councilperson Meyer. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Okay, item C, 11C, subsection B, passes unanimously. Now we're going to move on to item 11D. Consider and act on the first reading of ordinance number 2025-37, amending the Bastrop Code of Ordinances, Chapter 13, Utilities, Article 1302, Water and Wastewater Rates and Charges, Section 130203, Sewer Connection and Tapping Fees, by enacting Section 130203, B1 through 13, and move to include on the April 8th, 2025 consent agenda. This just in. Breaking. Okay. So, Ms.
Good evening. Yes, so that just in, but I can skip to what you're looking at real quick. Everything is the same except for number 11 was revised slightly today just to make terms read a little clearer. So that's it. That's the only change. The terms.
And this gives developers the ability to pay for and reserve reservations, which we will then include on some of the wastewater discussions that we were talking about before.
Correct.
With their name on a list that we're going to hold for them.
Correct. So right now, when you saw the chart before, those are all things that are in process. There's a plat and there's a development agreement in process. Sometimes those things don't manifest.
Right.
And so as opposed to us continuing to plan as if it's coming and expending more engineering dollars, we can have them pay a fee that reserves their space essentially in the line.
Yes.
And was that $50 a month?
No, so it's $50 a month per LUE. So it's
Right.
$50
Yeah.
per LUE per month, right? And so it's really, this to me is another exciting piece of legislation that CM Carrillo directed us to go ahead and draft to adopt. especially because, well, back history. Previously, when we were trying to understand capacity, available capacity at our wastewater treatment plant, we were going through a very manual process of trying to figure out, we have development meetings that occur every Thursday. Some of that's speculative. Some of that actually comes to fruition. But every time that those developments come, they have a potential impact on our capacity. And so what this would mean is if you want to ensure that we have the capacity to serve, you have to pay to reserve that right. And so it's really meaningful because it also requires a feasibility study to be submitted to the city. The city engineer would review that feasibility study, have to determine that we have the capacity, and then and only then would we ask for the reservation fee if they decide to move forward. Now, that reservation fee would be good for 2 years, and that's to mirror the vesting statute, and that was just to kind of keep everything copacetic. So they have a maximum reservation for 2 years, and then there is a credit schedule that we built into it. And essentially, if you're paying this reservation fee and you start construction within the first year of allocating LUEs towards your development, that credit would be applied towards any of your utility fees specifically. It has to be towards utility fees because utilities with utilities. If you start development within the second year, you would get 50% of the fees that you've paid credited back towards your utility fees. Now, if in the third year you haven't started, your reservation expires and you also get no credit of fees. So it is a very meaningful resource because I was TCEQ. Okay, so when our flows to our plant reach 75% of capacity, we must start engineering and designing and financially planning for the expansion of a new plant. Whenever our flows reach 90% of the permitted average daily flow for 3 consecutive months, per TCEQ, we must begin construction. Why is that meaningful? Because the total cost of, and this is a projected cost, right? This is not the reuse plant, but was at over $264 million. So it's an astronomical amount of money either way. Even if we go with reuse, let's say we go with the reuse plant, and it's $60 million. That's $60 million that the city has to secure, okay? And then there's also design, there's construction, and then there's also contingency that we have to bake into the execution of that plan. So it's very important for us that when we have people coming and looking to develop in our city limits, that we know if we're taking into account your development for capacity, because it is a multi-million-dollar decision that affects the city, that you're serious about development. And if you're not, that's fine. But if you are, then we need to know so we can plan accordingly and properly and just not be caught off guard. So with that, I am recommending that you take action on this ordinance, and I am open for questions. I also have our city engineer here who has reviewed the policy and can answer any questions.
So I really like this conceptually. It makes a lot of sense. What if someone, they come to you, they say, I want to build something, but they think, yeah, you got plenty of capacity. I'll wait a year before signing up to pay and see how things go. Maybe I don't have to sign up at all. Maybe once I start building 18 months from now, you'll still have capacity and I can just use it then and not have to reserve anything. What happens?
Well, then they take that risk.
Okay.
It is their option. They don't have to. I mean, by no means is this, this is completely optional, but this is for those larger developments like a Valverde, like a Pearl River. They're going to be very interested in this because usually the amount of LUEs that they're going to encumber out of the capacity that's available at the plant is significant.
Yeah.
It reduces their risk. It is a...
Yeah, I mean, it reduces the risk, especially for the things we're talking about right now, where end of 2026, we're at 150% capacity of that plant, which, with no planned solution for that yet, that impacts their ability to put things on the ground and make money on it. So, yeah, I like it a lot. Ms. Foster.
I have a question for line 28. The feasibility must be accompanied by a $5,000 escrow fee?
Sure.
Why is it called that? Because it's not returnable. It's like a feasibility.
So it is a pass-through, and it's escrowed because it's not revenue per se to the city. It's usually a pass-through cost of the cost to do the feasibility study. And so typically how that process works is you, if you're the developer, you submit a $5,000 escrow fee. We send out your potential LUE reservation count to our engineers. They do an analysis, and then they come up with a design, right? And then the cost associated with kind of some of those improvements. But usually you get refunded a portion of that money back. It's not usually the entire $5,000 that's needed.
Gotcha. So they are, so what other line was I looking at?
Sure.
So for paragraph 4, like line 66. So if upon completion of the determination, the director of wastewater, city engineer concludes that the proposed development does not meet one or more of the requirements for issuance of like what reasons could people be denied? Like they're checking us out and we're checking their development out, or at what stage of their planning do they even come?
So typically you come prior to platting, prior to entering into the actual development process. One of the determinations could be that we don't have available capacity. It could be just that if you come, if we were to have your development come to our city limits, it would put us over that 75% or over that 90%. And so at this time, because we don't have the available resources to guarantee that, because we have to do a certain level of planning in order to provide capacity, we're not going to guarantee this LUE reservation because we don't have what
So
we
it's
need
more about us not being able to meet it, not them being able to
Right.
meet
No,
one of
this
the
is
requirements.
yes. So this is about us being able to look at our assets and make sure that we have what they need. It's a liability issue. And so that's what the purpose of the feasibility is we check ourselves first and we say, hey, city, do we have the ability to serve? Hey, city, if they were to come, what would this put the plant at capacity for? What's that percentage? And if it's something that puts us in a tight spot with TCEQ requirements, then we're going to say, hey, at this time, we need to do some CIP planning, we need to move on our plans, different things like that. So it keeps us honest too. But that's a good question.
I think it's great. I couldn't understand if the denying was coming because something
They
were insufficient or we were insufficient.
Well, or if they have an insufficient design, if they don't provide us appropriate information.
Okay.
They may be insufficient. It may be, they're trying to do a certain size line and we go, yeah, that's not going to work.
But so this is like submitted with a plan. It's not just like we want LEs and we want to start paying on them.
No,
It's
there's
tied to like serious,
yes, and
serious
so
plans. This
yes.
weeds out this is for serious folks.
Yes.
Okay, gotcha. All good. I think it's a great idea. Thank you.
Any other questions, council?
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion to approve from Councilperson Plunkett, a second from Councilperson Meyer. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion carries unanimously. Move on to item 11E, consider and act on ordinance 2025-40 to amend the B3 Technical Manual Table 14001A Development Application Approval Process.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. You have a addition to Exhibit A, which was included in the staff report, but not included in the manual itself. So, I'm sorry, not included in Exhibit A as part of the ordinance. So we have a couple of changes to the notification standards that staff is proposing, and this is really in line with recent developments. Both North End Prairie, both Bastrop Grove, everything that is happening around us, our residents are asking for a lot more transparency. But the other thing that occurred to us is as we're going through our comprehensive plan review process that our code does not align with either our charter or the local government code. And so before folks say, but that's a super important document and we should know, yes, absolutely, and we do provide notice, but at no point does that comprehensive plan document vest or make the actual change. That public notification process still has to occur. The second part to that is right now we don't notify, and we're not required to notify by any code of a preliminary plat or final plat coming through. But we've been discussing at various committees, including the Bridging Bastrop Board, about how we need to let people know what's coming. And plats are ministerial in process, ministerial in nature. As long as they meet all of the directives, then they're going to be a go. They don't see the light of day other than Planning Commission. And so even if it's just planning commission, residents should know that it's coming. Residents should know what's happening around them. The other piece is a neighborhood regulating plan, which is a creature new to Bastrop and new to these form-based type codes. And I want to make it very clear that a neighborhood regulating plan is, again, a series of permits. It's not just we have this approved document and we're off and running to the races. And so my proposal is, instead of leaving that as an administrative authority to the staff, that we move it to Planning Commission as a recommending body, and then we move it to Council as a deciding body. Those are pretty significant because they're not zoning changes per se. They're allowed right now, but with all the nuances in the code, we might have some very scary stuff coming through. And then the other piece that is of a particular interest to me, which I don't really understand how it got written this way, but you know, it did, the warrants, which in the rest of the world, they're called variances. We call them warrants here. A little bit of a negative connotation, but okay. Warrants are administrative in nature. How does that happen if we have plats and zoning cases that are legislative in nature and we're approving a warrant, a variance to something? I feel like we've preempted a good portion of what the legislative bodies are put in place for. Codes have certain flexibility standards, and for that I would say I would love to give the staff 10% flexibility. So there's 10 parking spaces and they're short one, staff may have that ability, but we've got to give ourselves bumpers because approving some pretty significant variances to a plat or a neighborhood regulating plan can have catastrophic consequences down the road as we try to make the development happen. So those are the changes that we're proposing to the notification standards.
Thank you, and I really appreciate that, especially for our citizens, because it gives us a whole nother layer of transparency. There's so much confusion, especially with things going on right now with some developments. It's like, when did this happen? Is it, whatever. So this will help our citizens become more aware of what's going on. So I really appreciate any more transparency that we can provide for them is great.
And we changed the notification to 500 feet. We're already doing notification. I believe we've, and it's late, we've amended some segments. I think it's the non-conforming we've amended to 500. And we're actually even going 600 just to make sure we catch enough.
Great, thank you.
Councilperson Lee.
Thank you. Yes, I want to thank you too, because this is actually what I've been telling the residents on the North End Prairie, that it's the process that has allowed this project to get as far as it's gotten. So I'm glad that you have been also working on that end. And I also like the 500 feet, although it kind of like it's conflicting because we reduced one, didn't we? Let's go back and I closed my computer. So we're opening one to 500 feet, but then the other recommendation was to, let's see if I put a note here.
It's the comprehensive plan portion.
Yeah. So require preliminary plat and final plat, personal limits 500. But I thought I saw where the local government code reduces it.
Yes, the local government code only requires 200 feet.
200 feet. So, but
And
that's in the comprehensive plan.
No.
So I'm trying to distinguish the difference
No.
between reducing it to 200 in the local government code and increasing to 500, or am I confusing the two?
You're confusing.
Okay.
So the comprehensive plan in both the local government code and our charter requires minimal meetings. We've been hitting it with a bunch of workshops, et cetera, but our code says personal notice. And so when you define personal notice, that's a letter to every single resident. Well, you saw what happened when we made the changes to the duplex and some of that discussion language. The folks, lost their minds thinking something was going to happen. And nothing happens in the comprehensive plan other than it's a planning document. We still have to come with a rezoning. We still have to come with those things that will get public notice. So the comp plan is actually removing that personal notice because that personal notice will come later on, whether it's at a zoning concept scheme or whether it is through a rezoning.
Okay, so I found my notes. So I got the 200 feet. We're widening that to 500, but part of the staff's argument was that it's costly.
For the comp plan.
Okay, that's where I was trying to clarify. So for the comp plan. And because the PDD, there's already language in the code for PDD, we don't have to add that to this language.
For
Okay.
notice, yes.
Okay, great, thank you.
Councilperson Foster.
Okay, thanks. Yes, I support this as well. Just as we go through this chart, on the headers, it says ZBA, and then on the legend, the Board of Adjustments is BOA. Can we get those matching so that it's ZBA, ZBA, and not BOA? They're just like not matching the legend. You know what I mean?
Oh, yes, got it.
For A, appeal, is that what that means? Is that what we're using, A? That's
A,
right?
appeal.
That's correct? Okay. A
And
is-
so when you go to the warrant, that appeal was administrative in nature by variance, I'm sorry. Where am I? Administrative cutoff, it follows on to the next chart. See the bottom of,
Yes, I see administrative.
cuts off, and it should be carried over there. And so I would like P and Z to be the recommending body and council to be the decision-making body.
Got it. Okay, for the comprehensive plan map amendments under the CC and the city council column, is it supposed to have 2 public hearings? Is that like a 2 public hearing thing when we change the comprehensive
Our
plan?
charter says, I believe our code of ordinances, I believe says 1 public hearing, or is that the local government code?
Okay, if that needs to be cleaned up, then let's take one of those away too. Other than that, I think it looks great.
I have one additional question. So this is just for the neighborhood regulating plan?
No, so we're making changes right now to the preliminary plat to receive a personal notice, because right now that's not required, so neighbors don't get to know. And actually, it says no to posted notice, and that's posted on the ground, but we do a published notice, and that's out here in our, normal box. The definitions in here are a little bit wonky. Posted notice is the actual sign in front of the property. We don't need to do that, but I think we do need to notify people of what's coming immediately around them. And that posted note, that personal notice will have like a location map.
At preliminary plat?
And at final plat.
And the final plat? But what's all before that, so the public understands?
So a neighborhood regulating plan is step 1 if there's no rezoning required. If it was already zoned that and they're able to do that, that neighborhood regulating plan has only ever just come to planning commission. So with no other notice than the 72-hour notice up on the bulletin board. So I'm proposing to change that we notice the public within 500 feet of that. So a zoning concept scheme, a neighborhood regulating plan, a final plat, a preliminary plat, and any warrants will now have, so the public will also be aware if there's a variance that's reflected or requested on a plat.
So now, whether they meet the zoning or not, that they will be notified. Are you going to be replacing all references of warrants with variance?
Ma'am, that's a lot of, but yes, eventually, I mean, we are getting to the point where we all know, and as Mr. Goldsmith mentioned, a form-based code worked wonderful in the downtown, worked great. Let's get back to what worked, and let's start fixing what doesn't. So we're gonna go back to a normalized code at some point, hopefully in the very near future, and those words will go back to things that we can all find in the local government code.
Council motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
A motion approved from Councilperson Meyer, a second from Councilperson Lee. Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Okay, before we get to item 12, on the item that we tabled on the trees, there's one humorous typo that I forgot to mention. It says individuals commending tree removal without a permit shall be assessed double the mitigation fee. And while we might want to penalize them for applauding tree removal without a permit, that probably violates their First Amendment rights. So let's say commencing instead.
Got it, thank you.
Anyway, that's it. Okay.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, we
Right
are
on
finished
time,
with our
7
business
o'clock.
and done. See you all, Bastrop. Thank you. At 9:59.
Just got up.